Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, turning it into seawater that shot up in sprays. The once solid ice bridge began breaking apart, replaced by open sea. They're trying to stop us from reaching Onigashima. One of Wano's men murmured, worried. Shiva saw this and quickly began creating enormous ice pillars, launching them directly at the enemy ships, shattering them just as before. She prevented them from continuing to break the ice bridge. More and more ships were destroyed as her endless ice spears wreaked havoc, demolishing over 50 ships. The devastation was absolute, creating a wave of death until no more cannonballs could be fired. What are we going to do? One of the red scabbards asked, watching the water spray and sweep away everything connecting Onigashima to their army. Despite the setback, he wasn't ready to give up. Just keep moving. Don't worry about that. Nojiko shouted as she leaped through the air, confident the others would act soon. Chaochu was already preparing its icy breath with its frost-covered head. Even after destroying all the ships, Shiva began concentrating her energy as well. Together, she and Chaochu unleashed a freezing blast, amplifying the chilling impact on the sea. The powerful blasts quickly reached the destroyed area, beginning to refreeze it. The bridge that had been lost just moments before was recreated as the water solidified, allowing Wano's army to finally continue toward their goal. The same went for the Straw Hats, who were drawing closer, firing their weapons to prevent any cannonballs from hitting them. Although some of their ships were damaged by explosions around the fleet, Vippo remained steadfast, leading the charge as they decimated more and more beast pirates and Big Mom's forces than they lost themselves. This is bad. Queen murmured, watching the Straw Hat's ship heading straight for him. He immediately began transforming into his Brachiosaurus form to try and stop the advancing ship. But Vippo didn't halt. The ship barreled toward him, colliding with explosive force. The impact struck Queen head-on, and despite his efforts to hold the ship back, he was dragged across the ground, his legs carving into the earth. Queen tried to resist the advance, but he was pushed backward relentlessly. Sir Queen! The beast pirates exclaimed, watching him being dragged straight toward the skull of Onigashima. Meanwhile, shadows began to emerge in front of the pirates. They barely had time to worry about their leader as the other ships in the fleet arrived, firing and destroying everything around them. Cries of despair echoed across the island as cannonballs from the Straw Hats' fleet obliterated Kaido's port and ships. More ships began crashing to the ground at that moment, slamming into the waters or landing on the island's terrain, right in the middle of the beast pirates and Big Mom's fleet. Some ships had already been destroyed, while the remaining ones struggled to counter the Straw Hats' fleet. The final impact came from the islands drawing closer to the waters, overwhelming the smaller ships. They've arrived. They're here. The beast pirates and Big Mom's crew shouted, observing the scene with growing alarm. The beast pirates analyzed the situation, pointing their weapons and readying their swords against the enemies who had finally landed on Onigashima. On the other side, 18,000 pirates from the invading fleet disembarked from their ships, aiming their weapons at the defenders. The battle was now inevitable, as both sides prepared for the imminent clash. The Black Pearl continued dragging Queen across the island as he strained to resist the ship's weight, while Vippo steered it relentlessly against him. This continued until the ship finally reached the heart of Onigashima, crashing through its walls. The main ship of the Straw Hats breached the structure, entering a zone resembling a small city. The area trembled as Luffy, his companions, Kaido, and Big Mom engaged in a brutal clash of hockey, each side vying for dominance. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Onigashima, Wano's forces finally breached the island's defenses. They pushed through gaps in the fortifications with swords and weapons, catching Kaido's subordinates by surprise. Both sides braced for a direct confrontation. In the midst of the intense hockey explosions, the intensity began to wane. The deafening roar of power subsided as the clashes of hockey cancelled each other out. Yet Kaido clenched his teeth, glaring outward. Things don't seem to be going too well for you, Kaido. Luffy taunted, standing before the 4 emperors. The Wano army and my fleet have finally reached the island, and now my fleet is here. Let's see how your men handle this. He mocked. You think you've already won this war? Kaido growled, slamming his weapon into the ground as the area shook violently. They may have gotten in, but the ones who will win this war will be us. Chapter 460, Fleet Advance 03. Quickly, the soldiers of Wano emerged from the flanks of Onigashima, advancing with war cries, while a group of beast pirates, accompanied by several of Big Mom's soldiers, appeared wielding swords and blades, ready to confront the attack coming from the ICC. The enemies began firing their weapons rapidly, while the Wano soldiers responded by aiming their own long-range weapons and shooting back. At the same time, sword-wielding warriors charged through the crowd. Some were struck down and killed, but they retaliated, taking out enemy forces as they closed in on the pirates. Shiva, Nojiko, and Chaochu led the assault as a castle began to materialize at the entrance out of nowhere. Inside, various figures appeared in the windows. They were all members of the mafia led by Kaponbaj, armed with different kinds of bazookas aimed at the advancing enemies. I won't let them get through here, exclaimed Baj from the castle's facade, before his men unleashed a barrage of firepower. More and more enemy soldiers began firing from the castle, which resembled a giant fortress at Onigashima's entrance. Shiva acted quickly as bullets rained down on the crowd. She created a shield of ice. A wall between Wano's army and the enemies ahead. This halted the Allied forces' advance but also protected the Wano soldiers as gunfire and explosions battered the ice without damaging it. The enemies tried to breach it, but neither side could penetrate the barrier Shiva had created, forcing Wano's 30,000 troops to halt their advance. Suddenly, a blue-haired woman, Nojiko, dashed along the side of the wall. She caused the ground beside the ice wall to explode as she stepped again, generating a chain of detonations to propel herself forward. The explosions created by her bomb fruit pushed her at high speed straight toward the castle. Before the enemies could react, Nojiko burst into the castle, blowing up the entrance walls as Baj grimaced in pain and growled. "They're wrecking everything!" shouted one of the men inside the castle as explosions erupted everywhere while Nojiko tore through the floors, destroying everything. Men screamed in surprise at the invader as Nojiko continued moving from room to room, decimating all of Baj's soldiers. Kaponbaj, already stunned by the intruder in his castle, was even more shocked when a gigantic dog leaped over the ice wall. It was Chaochu, transformed into Cerberus, unleashing devastating attacks with each of his heads, destroying large portions of the castle and its towers. "Baj, you bastard!" Another figure entered the fray, Kid, charging furiously toward Baj. Kid leaped over the wall, his hand bristling with assembled weaponry powered by his magnetism. Both Chaochu's and Kid's attacks began to bring the castle down, inflicting immense pain on Baj. Feeling the impact, Baj tried to counterattack, but it was too late. Shiva appeared above him, launching a direct aerial assault that pierced the castle with a freezing ray, spreading ice all around. Baj made one final grimace before his body was frozen solid, as the castle partially exploded. Chaochu, Kid, and Shiva continued their assault on the immense castle ahead, while the red scabbards leaped over the wall, observing the frozen castle before them, with no further battles to fight. An explosion erupted behind the castle on the first floor as Nojiko emerged from it, having created an opening for Wano's soldiers to bypass and advance. The entry and exit routes created by her bomb fruit powers allowed Wano's soldiers to enter the castle and emerge on the other side of the frozen structure, catching the beast pirates by surprise. These enemies were soon overwhelmed by the Straw Hats, who led the charge in the next moment when the greatest resistance was no longer on this side. "We're losing ground. Fall back and regroup," shouted one of the beast pirates as he noticed their numbers dwindling rapidly. Massive chunks of ice, lightning, and fire flew through the air, wreaking havoc all around. Nojiko was in the thick of the chaos, blowing up every enemy she encountered, while Kid unleashed his own attacks. Meanwhile, the red scabbards had also joined the fray. Finally, Wano's army breached Onigashima, continuing their relentless advance against the enemies still inside. The battle was only just beginning. For Wano. "We'll defeat Kaido. We're here to free Wano." The cries rang out as Wano's army charged forward with ferocity. The situation wasn't looking good outside Onigashima either. All the ships of the Straw Hat fleet were now positioned in front of the island, crushing many of the enemy vessels. The crew aboard each ship watched excitedly, while the beast pirates and Big Mom's subordinates, under Queen's direct command, looked on in frustration as their ships were destroyed. Over 110 Allied vessels surrounded Onigashima, including 2 islands. "Damn it, they've arrived," muttered one of the enemy pirates. "Boss Queen, what should we do?" they asked, though Queen was nowhere to be seen at that moment. Suddenly, an explosion erupted as a man emerged from beneath the Black Pearl. He landed a short distance away, his face twisted in frustration. "We have no choice. Get ready to fight," he exclaimed, As the pirates began organizing themselves, 40,000 men stood prepared to face the invading fleet. Spare no effort. Use every devil fruit we've stockpiled, Queen commanded. In the next moment, thousands of beast soldiers began transforming into various beasts. Using the artificial fruits they had acquired, they emitted animalistic roars as their transformations completed. The beast pirates became far stronger than Big Mom's subordinates, who could only watch in awe as their allies gained incredible strength before the enemy. Looks like we've got a pack of animals here, Frankie commented, stepping out of the tank and looking toward Kaido's army behind the ship, which had dragged Queen's forces along as they passed. They have so many artificial zones? Based on the odds, the success rate should be low, so how many fruits did they produce to achieve all this? Chopper exclaimed in astonishment. This must be the result of 20 years ruling Wano. Robin murmured as she assessed the situation. Kaido's dream has always been to build the largest fleet in the world, entirely composed of beasts. And it's clear he took that dream very seriously. Jinbei added, his expression critical. Meanwhile, Bippo was guiding the islands toward Onigashima, following Luffy's orders about the first clash on this side, where most of the beasts were concentrated. The islands are getting closer, muttered one of the beast pirates as he saw them connect to Onigashima, pushing aside anything in their path. Why would they bring islands here? Another asked, staring at the tropical forest on each island. Wait. Do you hear that? Footsteps. Someone pointed toward the trees, which began toppling in the middle of the island as if something massive, more than just one, was barreling through. At that moment, deep within Onigashima, Kaido turned his gaze, sensing something with his haki, while Luffy broke into a confident grin at the dragon's expression. You think you've got a crew full of beasts, Kaido? Let me tell you, your crew isn't the only one made of beasts. And it's not the strongest either, he declared. Kaido raised an eyebrow, surprised by the enemy captain's confidence, clueless about what was happening. Outside. Suddenly, all the surrounding forests shook. The first trees began to crash to the ground as gigantic animals, controlled by Guren, advanced toward Onigashima. They strode from the beaches to the island with incredible force, dwarfing the beast pirates' members, whose zones were only 2 to 3 meters tall. The animals from the islands ranged from 15 to 30 meters in height. Animals. Queen gasped, utterly stunned. But what was most surprising was the other island. Another attacking force led by a transformed Page One, bringing with him different types of dinosaurs charging into battle. The beast pirates looked on in shock at the creatures advancing toward them from both sides, fear creeping in as the ground trembled with their approach. Even Big Mom's crew members were stunned by the sight, especially upon recognizing Page One leading the massive animals. In the next moment, the dinosaurs and animals stormed into Onigashima, charging against the beast pirates and Big Mom's forces. Even the zone users felt small and powerless before the gigantic creatures that trampled and hurled them aside. Don't let them through, shouted the beast pirates as they rushed toward a giant elephant, only to be struck by its powerful trunk before they could get close. The impact sent them flying like rockets, crashing into the ground unconscious. They're too strong, cried out a man who had transformed but was promptly flattened into the ground by the paw of a giant lion. Help! A leopard tried to flee, but a velociraptor caught up to him, sinking its teeth into his side. Page One. Why are you doing this? Queen shouted, watching in horror as Page One began devastating the troops, forcing them to retreat. Page One didn't respond to Queen, his gaze unwavering as he continued attacking those who were once his comrades. He didn't need to justify his actions. Across the battlefield, the entire fleet watched as the prehistoric and regular animals began pushing back the crowd of beast pirates, clearing the way. At the same time, Usopp, transformed into Bahamut, soared over the fleet, unleashing beams of light upon the enemy masses. Come on. They're opening the way for us, but we can't let them do it all alone, shouted one of the allied fleet members. Quickly, the crews from the ships began advancing as well, while 18,000 allied soldiers, alongside the animals, charged toward the island, eager to join the fight. Queen, tasked with stopping the enemy advance, stood dumbfounded. The true war had begun. The beast pirates were retreating further into Onigashima, unable to withstand the onslaught. Let's go! Lola exclaimed, leaping from the Black Pearl, determined to reach Luffy and the others. I won't let you pass. Queen appeared at that moment, attempting to stop her, determined not to allow more enemy reinforcements to disrupt his boss, Kaido. Suddenly, a figure leaped directly from the ship toward Queen, who was now in his ancient form. It was Hugo, who clenched his fist and charged forward with immense strength, using haki to deliver a blow that sent Queen staggering back from the impact. Meanwhile, Lola managed to slip past, racing toward Luffy and the others. She darted through the beast pirates, dodging attacks and leaping into the air as bullets whizzed by, narrowly missing her. Chapter 461, The 101. The sounds of battle echoed throughout Onigashima, mingling with the growls of beasts on both sides, the cries of men, explosions, and the clash of bullets and swords. Entire areas were destroyed as devil fruit powers were unleashed without restraint. At that moment, Kaido entered the skull-shaped island, surveying his surroundings. He could feel through his haki that things weren't going well for his side. Slowly, he turned his attention to Luffy standing before him. "So, your fleet is here," Kaido said, grabbing his cane abo and slamming it forcefully against the ground. He was finally ready to fight, determined to deal with the Straw Hat once and for all. Luffy faced him with a confident smile. "Let's end this, Kaido," Luffy said, and in the next moment, he unsheathed Enma and Ace, facing his opponent. "That weapon." Kaido looked at Enma, more surprised by it than by the sword once wielded by Roger, having seen Luffy use it during the war. Both remained silent as all sides braced themselves for battle. On the battlefield, alongside some of Luffy's crewmates, stood Big Mom, her children, and allies such as Germa 66. On Kaido's side were the two disasters, 5 of the Tobirapo, and most of the main members, while the rest of his group clashed against the horde of beasts and men. Everyone stared at each other, waiting for the first move. Big Mom wanted to fight Luffy but couldn't ignore the powerful Straw Hat crew members. She prepared to face them, with Kaido raising his cane abo. In the next moment, both Luffy and Kaido charged at each other. Luffy wielded his swords, striking against Kaido's weapon. Both weapons were imbued not only with armament haki but also with Conqueror's haki, which exploded at that moment. Energy bolts from the clash quickly spread in all directions as everyone tried to shield themselves from the vortex of energy. Kaido and Luffy seemed evenly matched. "Looks like we can't lag behind. After all, there are plenty of opponents for us to face here," Zoro said, now tying his bandana on his head and placing a sword in his mouth, ready to fight. "My family is here," Reiju commented, her gaze falling on her brothers and father nearby. But her eyes landed on the blonde figure standing a bit apart from them. Sanji, her youngest brother, who looked at her seriously, seemingly conflicted. "Leave. You'd better get out of here," Yamato said, urging a companion to retreat, as this battle was too overwhelming with so many dangerous enemies present. "I can help too," the person insisted, unwilling to leave after coming so far, especially as things were going well for the fleet invading Onigashima. "Let's go," Lucy said, her hair waving like everyone else's due to the shockwaves from Luffy and Kaido's ongoing clash. She slammed a fist into her palm, smiling at Big Mom, who glared at her with disdain. "I don't like the way you look at me, brat," Big Mom growled. Zeus and Prometheus perched on her shoulders. "Room." Lami activated his ability, preparing to fight the room's enemies. "Hey, old hag. I think I'm your opponent," Zoro said, stepping in front of Lucy and confronting Big Mom. The 4 emperors glared at him. "You attacked me earlier. I think it's time I return the favor, especially since Kaido is already dealing with the captain," he said, charging at her without warning. Big Mom simply raised her sword, imbued with a soul, and struck at Zoro, clashing against his 3 haki-coated swords and Conqueror's haki. In the next moment, a second 4 emperors level battle erupted on that side. The entire room was affected by the force of 2 clashes imbued with Conqueror's haki, shaking the entire place. "This," they murmured in awe. "Don't get distracted. They're coming," King exclaimed. In front of them, Yamato emerged, lifting her cane abo infused with Conqueror's haki, charging at King and Jack in that corner. Do all of them have the ability to imbue their attacks with Conqueror's haki? King couldn't help but think, a hint of terror in his mind. What kind of crew had so many members capable of using abilities that only those at or above 4 emperors level, with rare exceptions, could wield? However, he couldn't think too much about it, as Yamato's attack came at him at that moment, forcing him to retreat from her strength as the icy explosion reverberated throughout the room. "Rage was coming," her older brother exclaimed, and the next moment, Rage appeared, engulfed in fiery red phoenix flames, charging toward them. Lami didn't stay behind either, advancing against the 3 most powerful siblings of the Charlotte family. Meanwhile, Lucy stood still, waiting for someone to attack her, but her eyes were focused on a specific group from Kaido's forces. The Tobirapo. Kaido continued clashing fiercely with Luffy, while the Straw Hat grinned at him. "You're trying that hard," Luffy taunted. Kaido didn't appreciate being underestimated, but suddenly, he felt his body being thrown back as an explosion erupted near Luffy. "He's using the multiplication fruit," Kaido murmured, having no time to react before his body was hurled backward, crashing against the walls of the room and disappearing from sight. "Boss Kaido." King looked on in shock, only to be taken aback as Yamato charged at them again. "Kaido!" Black Maria screamed, just as she shielded herself from an incoming attack. Lucy had stretched her arm for a hockey-infused punch, deciding to engage the Tobirapo now that Zoro was holding his ground against Big Mom. Ulti, Who's Who, and Sasaki readied themselves for battle as they saw Black Maria flung back by Lucy's punch. Kaido felt his body hurtling through Onagashima's walls, breaking them one by one until he finally stopped, gritting his teeth in frustration. In the distance, Luffy was already in the last destroyed area, following him. Luffy stepped through the cloud of smoke, entering a seemingly calm spot. "You brat." Kaido emerged, his body glowing blue as he activated his hybrid dragon transformation. "Kaido. By the end of this war, you'll lose your title as the world's strongest creature," Luffy said, his skin beginning to glow purple as he assumed his hybrid form as well, chaos flames erupting around him. Kaido stared at him seriously, his weapon trembling in the room's tension, while Luffy held his two blades steady. Both weapons were coated with Conqueror's haki, shaking with immense power. Something Kaido also did, now even stronger than before. In the next moment, they charged at each other without another word, clashing once again. "Daiadaku my hack!" Kaido roared, his Kanabo surging with purple lightning, unleashing an attack even more powerful than Raimai hack thanks to his hybrid form. "Chaos Twin Blade Slash!" Luffy declared as his blades glowed with chaos flames. Their attacks collided, creating an explosion even greater than before, devastating the entire area. Onigashima trembled more violently than ever, and everyone felt the intensity of the battle. The force spread across all the battlefields at that moment. "They're taking this seriously. So I can't fall behind, don't you think, Big Mom?" Zoro commented with a smile, as Big Mom growled at him. Unable to steal his soul, she had no choice but to rely on brute strength. But in the end, she couldn't defeat Zoro in their clash, which became a source of frustration for her. Both forces reached their confrontation's peak, resulting in a massive explosion of power as Big Mom and Zoro were pushed back a few meters. "Mama, are you okay? Mama, should we destroy him?" Zeus and Prometheus exclaimed beside her, concerned and surprised that such a small man could go toe-to-toe with her attack. "Zeus, Prometheus, launch an attack," Big Mom ordered, and both nodded, beginning to unleash fire and lightning toward Zoro. Zoro saw the fire and lightning coming his way and quickly dodged, slashing or using sword to avoid the blows. However, at one moment, they managed to create an opening. Big Mom noticed this and hurled her sword, Napoleon, into the air, generating a massive impact as she advanced on Zoro. Fire and lightning converged toward him, exploding with full force with Zoro at its center. The entire room shook violently at that moment. "Zoro!" Lucy murmured as she continued fighting against the Tobirapo. But, in the next moment, a red explosion erupted from the destroyed area. Eyes glowed through the smoke, and Big Mom looked surprised, preparing herself to face an opponent who wouldn't fall so easily. On the contrary, he was gearing up for a counterattack. Suddenly, red energy radiated from where Zoro was, his eyes glowing crimson in that area. He wielded the power of his sword, imbued with the strength of Odin. In the next instant, a powerful explosion appeared above Big Mom, leaving her sword, the cloud, and Prometheus, the sun, equally astonished, along with the four emperors herself. Onigashima lit up in that moment, and everyone in the room could only witness the force of the impact. A slash, reminiscent of the Straw Hat Crew's entrance, tore through part of the skull-shaped structure, slicing down its side and gleaming slightly in the sunset. The entire island trembled even more as Luffy and Kaido's battle raged on. Amid the explosion, Zoro emerged, surrounded by red energies. The power still emanated from his sword after the attack, leaving a visible opening to the outside of Onigashima from the room. A clean slash that extended from the roof down to his line of sight where he had aimed. Big Mom, still standing amidst the smoke, growled as she watched Zoro walk calmly through the destruction. His body showed few apparent injuries from her last attack, but at the same time, she noticed a massive gash across her chest. "I can't deny it. This sword is quite useful," Zoro murmured, glancing at his blade, which seemed to carry the essence of Odin. "You damn brat!" Big Mom shouted furiously, feeling something she rarely experienced, pain. Someone had finally managed to wound her significantly. "It seems things are getting quite interesting here." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. Someone was walking calmly toward the center of the area. Big Mom turned to the side, and upon seeing who was approaching, she ignored Zoro and widened her eyes in shock. Katakuri, who was battling Lami and using his Mochi fruit model, springy human devil fruit to manipulate the environment with its awakened state, also stopped his attack, surprised to see who had arrived. The same reaction came from his siblings, who stood in stunned silence. "Mama! How is this possible?" Many of Big Mom's children murmured. They were all stunned to see someone identical to Big Mom but clearly younger, resembling the photos from Whole Cake Island that depicted her in her youth. Big Mom was even more bewildered, sensing through her haki the presence of someone she hadn't perceived in a long time. Her eyes narrowed. "Lola? Is that you?" she asked, both confused and frustrated. The young woman, with pink hair and a much slimmer figure than everyone remembered, walked calmly while holding a hammer. "It's been a while since I've seen you, Mama," Lola said with a cheerful smile. Chapter 462, The Wano War 02. Explosions were occurring all over Onigashima at this moment as the island trembled under the clash between Luffy and Kaido, while the Beast Pirates and Big Mom's forces still tried to hold back the enemy advance. The pirates were attempting to deal with the people of Wano on one side of the island with 20,000 soldiers, while at the Skull's entrance, the Straw Hat fleet was steadily gaining ground against 40,000 soldiers, having already left the port and advanced deeper into the island. It was clear they were doing their best to stop the Straw Hat fleet's progress. A bolt of lightning suddenly surged through the battlefield, striking all the beast pirates who had transformed into monsters. They began to feel their bodies slowing down. "What's happening?" they thought sluggishly, moving with difficulty under the effect of Foxy's lightning. At that moment, Foxy's pirates quickly launched their attack, utilizing the 6 styles of the Navy. Elsewhere, Bellamy pummeled enemies with his spring-loaded punches, easily defeating each beast. At the same time, his fists were coated in haki as he used instant transmission and moonwalk to maneuver, his crew close behind, fighting fiercely against the beast pirates. Dory and Brogy, along with a group of other giants, made the battlefield quake. Each strike, whether with fists or weapons, caused explosions across the area. Dory and Brogy, being the most powerful giants present, unleashed devastating slashes that obliterated entire regions, sending debris flying everywhere. Although their bounties did not yet fully reflect their power, each was strong enough to be worth billions of baileys at this moment. In a nearby area, hundreds of beasts had been turned to stone. Hancock created hearts with her ability, firing heart-shaped arrows, while the Amazon shot haki-infused arrows. The second group, led by Margaret, also advanced. Using haki, every arrow they shot struck down a beast, killing them instantly. Queen was supposed to be helping lead the troops but was instead occupied, fending off Hugo in his hybrid form. Hugo's body was covered in rocks and crystals from his Titan transformation, and he was giving the dinosaur before him no chance to rest. Meanwhile, the beasts led by Greg, the giant gorilla, and Page 1, leading the dinosaurs, continued to crush the beast pirates. More and more enemies were being wiped out. In a short time, Kaido's army had lost a significant portion of its numbers, unable to withstand the advance of the Straw Hat fleet. Alongside Hugo, other key members of the Straw Hat crew were also making their moves. Vivi and Nami created hurricanes that ravaged the area, hurling countless enemies into the air as the winds destroyed everything in their path. Frankie launched combined attacks with Baby 5, mowing down enemies with gunfire. Shirahoshi advanced with her lance, defeating opponent after opponent as she channeled haki through her trident, swimming through the air using moonwalk and instant transmission to strike before her opponents could react to her incredible speed. At that moment, a colossal figure began to rise in the middle of the battlefield, dominating the space above the war as a pink dragon appeared. "It's a dragon!" the enemies shouted, horrified. Rebecca had used her devil fruit to transform into a dragon as massive as Kaido. All the beast pirates' soldiers were stunned. "This is what we saw in the newspapers. It's like Kaido. She has power like Kaido's," they exclaimed in disbelief. In the next instant, Rebecca opened her mouth, unleashing an explosive breath that devastated the entire area, taking down at least 1,000 soldiers in a single blast. Another notable advance came from Yutan, who punched through each beast with overwhelming strength, destroying them with haki-infused blows. Simultaneously, she continued to sing, affecting thousands of soldiers who hadn't yet been defeated, as they were protected by the haki of Big Mom and Kaido. Her singing seemed to emit a similar effect, causing thousands of soldiers to collapse. The fallen soldiers found themselves awakening in a different space, disoriented, until Yut herself appeared before them, adorned in a fully golden armor. "We're falling. Even the strongest among us," observed some of the remaining beast pirates, now utterly hopeless. Chopper had also transformed into his maximum form, equivalent to a giant, making the ground tremble with each step as he fought the beasts with ease. Simultaneously, Bippo joined the battle, ceasing to use his float fruit model, flying human devil fruit powers and instead shifting into his Sulong form. Alongside other minks also in the heat of battle, he defeated every beast, showcasing their superiority. Alvida slid across the battlefield, using her Lisa fruit to glide as if skating. She struck every opponent in her path with her mace, creating a true bloodbath. Robin launched attacks reminiscent of her feats in Manafort, generating thousands of fingers firing finger pistol at machine gun speed, surpassing even the combined attacks of Frankie and Baby 5. Enel watched the scene with disdain, feeling slightly offended at having to deal with what he considered trivial, mere lackeys. Deciding to shake the island once and for all, he raised his hands, beginning to generate lightning. "Enel, don't even think about it." Suddenly, Luffy's voice echoed throughout Onigashima, even as he battled Kaido at that moment. Amplifying his tone, he caused Enel to raise an eyebrow and hesitate. Luffy had ordered him to hold back his most powerful attacks, which could destroy the entire place, as they needed him to use them at a later time. Reluctantly, Enel released a powerful bolt of lightning, devastating thousands of beasts at once with the energy from his body. Meanwhile, Brook advanced, laughing his characteristic laugh, freezing every beast he encountered in his path. Bonnie fought fiercely as well, creating enormous arms coated with haki, imitating the techniques she had heard of from Luffy, who fought as Nika. Domino wielded her whip, dominating her battle with ease thanks to her current strength. Monet summoned a blizzard, while Perona sent out her ghosts, armed with a wand that had been transformed into a weapon coated with haki. Her attacks left enemies depressed and incapable of escape. Jinbai and Hatch continued their advance, successfully confronting the main members of both Kaido's army and Big Mom's allies with their fishman techniques or swordsmanship. Meanwhile, all the fleets advanced, refusing to lag behind. The enemy pirates grew desperate in the face of such a numerous and powerful force. The fleets involved were Kuja pirates, led by Boa Hancock's second ship of the Kuja pirates, led by Margaret Foxy pirates, led by Foxy Bellamy pirates, led by Bellamy Bardo Club pirates, led by Bartolomeo Shandian warriors, led by Wiper dinosaur fleets, led by Page 1 giant animal fleets, led by Greg, giant gorilla, giant warriors of Elbaf, led by Dory and Brogy Grand Tesoro crew, led by Guild Tesoro Hapo Armada, led by Chinjao Grand Yonta Maria fleet, led by Orlumbus Ideo pirates, led by Ideo Beautiful pirates, led by Cavendish Dress Rosa giant pirates, led by Hadruden Deep Sea pirates, led by Regent Angel City warriors, led by Eleutheria Black Claw pirates, led by Zane Iron Corsairs, led by Pharaoh Thunder pirates of the south, led by Rido Wind Rebel Gutters, led by Gay Lice Dragons, led by Glacius Sand Corsairs, led by Dune Storm Travelers, led by Typhoon Black Hawks, led by Falker. The battle on Onigashima became increasingly one-sided. Neither Kaido nor Big Mom could have foreseen such a situation. With more and more of their 40,000 soldiers being eliminated, the enemy quickly lost control. The advance of the pirates and the growing despair began to erode the morale of the opposing army. Even though Queen attempted to lead and stabilize the troops, he was being overwhelmed and could barely resist the strength of any member of the Straw Hat crew. However, enraged, Queen quickly stood up, coating his attack with haki before delivering a blow. "You think you can take me down that easily?" he roared, sending his opponent flying with the impact. Blood trickled down Hugo's face as he stood up, staring at his opponent with an intrigued look. "Well, it seems you know how to do more than just take a beating," he murmured with a defiant smile, readying himself for the next clash. "Enough, it's time to take this seriously," Queen declared. After all, he hadn't yet unleashed his full strength. Despite bleeding, his body was incredibly resilient, as expected of the second strongest of the calamities. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Onigashima, the battle raged on fiercely. The blood-soaked advanced against the crowd while the Straw Hats led their main members. There were still about 20,000 pirates trying to hold them back. The allies had already pushed through most of them but were surprised to find the people of Wano wielding weapons and fighting skillfully. Though not as strong, they still posed a challenge. The pirates had expected to find an army weakened by the famine that plagued the country, but this wasn't the case. Thus, the advance continued, with the defenders trying to stop them. The sheer number of enemies remained an obstacle, but the combined efforts of the Straw Hats and their allies paved the way, making the fight much easier. Kid, on the other hand, was also vying for the spotlight, determined to reach Kaido, though it seemed like a distant dream as Luffy continued his battle with the four emperors. Suddenly, a devastating attack erupted in that area, tearing through the walls and causing massive destruction. A part of Onigashima's skull was sliced apart by a single strike. Meanwhile, on the other front, Queen began countering all of Hugo's attacks and gaining ground against him. However, this shifted when a clash of two blades sent a shockwave in his direction, barely allowing him to dodge. Frustrated, he turned to see who had attacked him. At that moment, Dory and Brogy approached, their hands coated in haki. "Hey, little one, leave him to us," Dory said. "I agree with Dory. He's our opponent now," Brogy stated confidently. Hugo looked at them with frustration but realized he had no choice. In the end, he had to conserve his strength. Besides, he had to admit that the giants were far stronger than when they had first met in Little Garden, surpassing their past power and now ranking among the mightiest of the main crew members. While this unfolded, Luffy faced Kaido, their battle of hakis and weapons continuing. "Things aren't looking too good for you, Kaido," Luffy taunted as their blades clashed, each trying to overpower the other. Both were in their hybrid forms, striving to outdo one another. Kaido growled but said nothing, his full focus on the battle. Even as he saw his crew falling, he was determined to defeat Monkey D. Luffy. They paused momentarily, the ground still trembling from the force of their attacks, as well as from the battles raging elsewhere. They stepped back, staring at each other from a distance, preparing to strike again. However, Luffy acted first, amplifying his voice to be heard by all. "Lami, let's wrap this up quickly," Luffy exclaimed. "I want everyone in their strategic positions, as we planned. It's time to end this cleanly," he commanded confidently, sensing that most of the war would soon be resolved, leaving only the key opponents for him to face. Lami, still in the chamber fighting Kitakuri and his siblings, heard Luffy's call. She quickly nodded and raised her hand, activating her ability as the room began to cover all of Onigashima. At that moment, she started shifting the positions of various individuals, placing each with their respective opponents. The battlefield was rearranged in a terrifyingly precise manner, ensuring that Luffy could minimize casualties while consolidating their advantage. Chapter 463, The Wano War 03. At the moment Lami managed to control the entire battlefield, Luffy realized she had complete control of the battlefield, taking charge to execute any strategy she envisioned. This made her extremely powerful with the Operation Fruit model, Modification Human, as she could alter any scenario to favor her allies as she pleased. She couldn't affect people with haki stronger than hers, but she could position the crew against the right opponents. Quickly, she began to make changes. After all, Luffy wanted to balance the fight, ensuring each crew member faced their own adversary. Yamato, who was fighting King and Jack, suddenly disappeared, swapping places with Zoro, and reappearing in front of Big Mom. Meanwhile, Zoro reappeared in front of King as his new opponent. Hugo also emerged beside Zoro, as his opponent was Jack. The last Calamity, however, was still at Onigashima's entrance and continued to battle Dory and Brogy. Yamato looked at Big Mom, who returned her gaze with a strange expression, narrowing her eyes at her. "Are you Kaido's daughter?" she asked in a serious tone. Yamato struck her Kanabo against the ground and smiled. "Yes, I am. And I am your opponent," she replied with determination. "Don't forget about me too." Shishi. Luffy's voice echoed beside her as he appeared next to Yamato, taking a fighting stance and looking at Big Mom with his characteristic grin. Kitakuri narrowed his eyes as Lami appeared before him, still influencing the entire battlefield. She said nothing, merely observing him as her opponent, preparing to begin the fight. Smoothie was startled to see Lola reappear in front of her. The long-lost sister appeared, her looks resembling a young Big Mom. "Lola," Smoothie murmured, surprised that she too wanted to be her opponent. After all, Lola had always been considered weak, even before her escape. "A failure. It looks like I'm your opponent, sister," Lola said, staring at Smoothie with a smile as she rested her hammer on her shoulder after twirling it. Earlier, Lola had asked Luffy to let her face one of her stronger siblings, wishing to prove she was now strong. For this, she chose the second most powerful family member as her challenge, Smoothie. Meanwhile, Cracker saw Kuina appear as she cancelled Shiva's transformation, maintaining a calm form as she selected one of her swords to use against him. As for the Tobirabo, with 4 still remaining, they were confronted by Robin, Perona, Domino, and Monet, each appearing in front of one of them. The fights began instantly, and the central area of Onigashima quickly became a chaotic battlefield with numerous key battles occurring simultaneously. Reija continued facing her family, effortlessly kicking each of her brothers. She advanced toward the last one, who was her father, but before she could attack, Sanji appeared, enveloped in blue flames, stepping in to face him. Reiju defended herself with her knees. "Sanji." Reiju murmured. "Reiju," he replied, recognizing his sister. Quickly, the two clashed, launching red and blue flames in an intense exchange of kicks and strikes. Meanwhile, the remaining Straw Hat crew members appeared before the enemy subleaders. The Beast Pirates and Big Mom's crew were being confronted by the Straw Hat's main members with ease. However, not all the main Straw Hat members were fighting. Nami, Vivi, Frankie, Enel, and Usopp stayed out of the battles while the others advanced, fighting lackeys and dominating the skirmishes. At the same time, both the Straw Hat fleet and Wano's army kept advancing, facing Kaido and Big Mom's subordinates, gaining more ground with each step, leaving thousands of fallen soldiers and destruction in their wake. In another part of Onigashima, several sections of the outer wall began exploding as Luffy and Kaido fought fiercely in their hybrid forms. They exchanged blows, abandoning their weapons, turning the fight into a brutal competition of punches and kicks infused with haki. As they progressed floor by floor, they destroyed everything in their path, affecting even other battles around them, forcing combatants to evade the consequences of the clash between the two four emperors. On the roof of Onigashima, an explosion echoed as Luffy's and Kaido's conquerors' hakis clashed violently, generating shockwaves throughout the area. "What's the matter, Kaido? Did you think it'd be so easy to defeat me after what happened at Manaford?" Luffy shouted, throwing a punch so fast Kaido barely managed to react. Luffy used instant transmission to move faster than the dragon had anticipated, landing a devastating blow that sent Kaido crashing into one of the massive stones on Onigashima's roof, generating an explosion that shook the structure. Kaido emerged moments later, looking frustrated. A line of blood trickled down his chin, proof that the attack had hurt him. "Don't get cocky, brat," Kaido roared, wiping the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He seemed irritated, yet determined, as if he was beginning to relish his confrontation with the Straw Hat. At the same time, Luffy smiled defiantly, eager for the fight to continue. Both enveloped their bodies in haki and charged at each other once more. The area exploded around them from the sheer force of their blows, turning the battle into a spectacle of destruction. They seemed like two bolts of lightning streaking across the rooftop, both glowing purple, colliding repeatedly and generating explosions that devastated the surroundings. The battles below raged on, but now the explosions caused by Luffy and Kaido's clash dominated the scene. The chaos was overwhelming, with the roof and walls of Onigashima's skull trembling and cracking. "You know, you're so arrogant that you never actually awakened your fruit. You've never faced anyone stronger than you. Without a rival to push you, you never grew, never evolved," Luffy said, landing another punch on Kaido's face, breaking through his defenses and gaining the upper hand in the exchange. The impact dented the four emperors' face, sending him flying once more and leaving a trail of blood behind. Kaido stood up again, frustrated yet again. Luffy's words were no lies. He had never fully awakened the power of his fruit because he had never needed to. He had always been strong enough to crush any threat before it forced him to evolve. He was considered the strongest creature in the world, and that status had made him complacent. "You're incredibly annoying," Kaido's voice echoed, filled with rage. He seemed to finally be taking Luffy seriously. At that moment, Kaido fully transformed into his blue dragon form. He began to ascend into the sky, swimming through the clouds forming over Onigashima. His eyes shone with determination as he stared down at Luffy from above. Kaido then opened his mouth, concentrating his power. A devastating breath of flames was unleashed directly toward Luffy, intended to obliterate the Straw Hat and see if he could escape it. Luffy remained silent, watching Kaido charge his fiery breath. The sky above Onigashima glowed intensely, as the sun had already set, leaving the battlefield illuminated only by fire and destruction. The flames surged toward Luffy, and the entire area exploded in smoke, shattering everything around. It appeared Luffy hadn't been able to avoid the attack. Kaido watched silently, his narrowed eyes fixed on the explosion's epicenter. Moments later, a purple glow began to emerge from the smoke. The glow grew, then erupted into flames reaching the sky, revealing a colossal creature. Luffy, now in his Ifrit form, blasted the ground with his feet as he roared at Kaido. "Roar! All right, Kaido. Let's take this fight to the next level," Luffy declared calmly in his Ifrit form. In the next instant, both advanced, initiating a battle between titans. Kaido launched another breath of flames toward Luffy, who gathered chaos fire in his own mouth. Luffy unleashed a counter-breath. On one side, a chaotic purple fireball from Ifrit, on the other, a red fireball from Kaido. The two attacks collided, generating an explosion so intense that it illuminated the entire horizon, visible even to the people in Wano. The blast shook a vast area of Onigashima's rooftop, making everyone feel the sheer magnitude of the fight. Kaido, still in the heat of battle, unleashed consecutive slashing wind attacks, determined not to give Luffy an easy moment while glowing in his draconic form. However, before Kaido could fully react, Luffy endured the attacks and surged forward, emerging from the explosion as the cuts Kaido created struck his skin before dissipating. Luffy vanished using instant transmission in his 50-meter-tall Ifrit form, and Kaido attempted to evade by moving to the side. But to his surprise, he felt Luffy grab his tail. Before Kaido could respond, Ifrit dragged him downward and slammed him into the ground with immense force. The impact caused Kaido to spin and smash his face against the rooftop, triggering a massive explosion that cracked the entire area. But Luffy didn't stop there. He yanked Kaido back and hurled him to the other side. Repeatedly, Luffy swung Kaido around, with the dragon struggling to break free. This continued until Luffy released him, sending Kaido crashing into one of Onigashima's giant horns, nearly splitting it in half. The sheer force of the collision shook the entire island once again, causing the battles nearby to pause momentarily as the combatants glanced upward. "Looks like Luffy's having fun up there," Yamada remarked while still fighting Big Mom alongside Lucy. "You're right. Let's send this old hag up there too," Lucy declared. Big Mom gritted her teeth, visibly irritated as she struggled to fend off the two. She was having a hard time, and quickly tried to counterattack. However, both were far too quick. Yamato, in her hybrid form, had elevated her physical abilities to an even more impressive level than usual. Lucy, meanwhile, used her Gear 4, Snakeman form, significantly increasing his speed as he faced the powerful four emperors. Big Mom tried to strike them again, but before she realized it, Lucy and Yamato had already evaded her attacks from Prometheus and Napoleon. Suddenly, they both appeared directly in front of her. Lucy landed a powerful punch to Big Mom's stomach, while Yamato swung her cane nabo, causing a crushing pain that made Big Mom double over. "Is that all you've got, old hag?" Lucy taunted as Big Mom was sent flying backward, crashing into walls and breaking everything in her path. The four emperors charged forward in a frenzy but was soon launched into the sky, smashing through several layers of Onigashima. She collided with the island's ceiling, where Kaido and Luffy were continuing their colossal battle. Chapter 464, The Wano War 04. The explosions continued in Onigashima as the battles intensified. Luffy was facing Kaido in his beast form so far, while both flame users' explosions clashed against each other. Meanwhile, Yamato and Lucy were taking Big Mom to the rooftop of the island, where they would have a more open fight against the strongest woman in the world. Intense flashes lit up the sky as red and purple flames exploded in the confrontation between Kaido's dragon form and Monkey D. Luffy's Ifrit. Even the people of Wano, not only those living along the country's coast but also those further inland. In Kuri, Udon, Ringo, Hikamei, the flower capital, and even Kibi without the mountain in front, could see the sky glowing in the distance. Many put their hands together in prayer. "Please, deliver us from the beast pirates. Save Wano from the evil dragon. Protect our loved ones. May they return in glory. May Wano be freed once and for all." These were the prayers of the citizens all over Wano, worried about their brothers, children, fathers, and mothers who might be caught in that infernal battle, while they hoped for the Straw Hats' victory without knowing exactly what was happening there. The explosions continued to echo across the island as Onigashima entered a brutal battle, despite the fact that the only fight visible to them was the clash of the four emperors. Meanwhile, not only the people of Wano were watching the fight from a distance. Outside Onigashima, below the waterfalls surrounding the country, a group of 8 ships was sailing at sea level beneath Wano, hidden among the peaks surrounding the island, observing from afar with telescopes and Den Mushi recording the situation. The symbol on the ships indicated that they belonged to the world government. On board, several agents dressed in black suits kept their eyes on the explosions visible even from a distance. Reporting. "The battle has begun. The Straw Hats are fighting Big Mom and Kaido's pirates in Onigashima," said one agent, speaking through a Den Mushi. "Understood," replied a cold, authoritative voice from the other end of the line, belonging to an elderly man. He continued. "I want all Cypher Pol Zero agents present to advance to Onigashima. I need detailed information on everything that's happening in real time." The masked Cypher Pol Zero agents on board the ships simply nodded in silence. They left the ships, swiftly advancing toward Wano's territory, soaring through the skies using moonwalk. "Report any new developments," ordered the voice on the Den Mushi. "Yes, sir. We will report any updates," the agent responded before ending the transmission. Back in Mary Joai's, in the open hall of Pangaea Castle, the 5 elders were following the situation through the recently disconnected Den Mushi. One of the Gorosei was observing a map with a pensive expression. There were more Den Mushi on the table, all monitoring the situation. "The battle has been ongoing for only a few minutes, but it seems they've already gone to full-scale war," one of them remarked. The Den Mushi footage from the ship showed the scene above Wano. Although Onigashima itself wasn't visible, beyond the waterfall and the large peak of Wano, the explosions were a clear sign that the fight had begun. It seems the Straw Hats advanced through the sky quite efficiently. "That cursed power of that devil fruit," one of them muttered, dissatisfied. After all, the float fruit model, flying human devil fruit, was one of the fruits that had caused them the most trouble, especially when combined with the mind of Monkey D. Luffy, who knew how to use it skillfully despite the fruit belonging to one of his subordinates. Kaido didn't even bother to place ships in Wano's sea. "That's allowing our agents to sail with ease and get a good view before the main force arrives," another elder commented, looking at the nighttime image as black clouds seemed to begin gathering above Wano. "What should we do now? Shall we begin?" another elder asked. "We should summon a meeting with all the kings of the world. I believe it's time to start. Before the main spectacle," another one suggested. "Yes." The third of them nodded. "We can already start discussing the most important topics, and soon they will witness the true power of the world government." Wasting no time, One of them picked up the golden den mushi. "I want you to summon all the kings for an emergency meeting," he said. "Yes, yes." The voice on the other side immediately responded. "We are about to witness the future of the world government, but I still want to know what we should do about other matters. After all, we have some intruders in Mary Joyce, and 2 admirals are away. Kizaru cannot handle everything alone." St. Marcus Mars said. "We'll deploy the Holy Knights. The majority of them are stationed here," St. Shepherd Jupiter suggested, and the others nodded in agreement. After all, there were pests trying to bite them, and they were too concerned with the 4 emperors' battle to deal with them now. The order was immediately passed along through another den mushi. The kings were surprised by another call during the reverie, as they had been discussing some matters over the past few days, but nothing of significant importance. The discussions mainly revolved around economics and some marine affairs, without any major revelations. Garp stood at the entrance of the Queen of Goa's room in one of the castles, ensuring that nothing happened to her during her stay. Everything seemed normal until they were summoned to the meeting by government officials, bringing an order from the Gorosei for an almost emergency gathering. "A meeting so suddenly?" Makino said as she stepped out after dressing, putting on a crown and a robe, her curiosity evident as she looked at Garp. "It seems so. Something must be happening," Garp murmured with a narrowed gaze. "And I was just about to sleep," Tadun grumbled, also stepping out from the room next door. "Stop complaining, we must obey the request," Whoop Slap said as he approached. "Queen Makino. It's good to see you here already, we can go together." Banda Destiny, another queen from East Blue, said as Makino smiled warmly. "Of course, Queen de Destiny. We can go together," Makino replied politely, and both made their way out with their guards, advisors, and the Marines, including Garp, accompanying them. Garp. As they reached the meeting place, Garp saw his apprentice standing there. Kobe appeared calm, but Garp noticed his hand clenching repeatedly. "Kobe," Garp murmured, allowing the queens to pass first as he looked at his apprentice with a sigh, already understanding why he was so frustrated. "This isn't right. Vice Admiral Garp. It shouldn't be like this," Kobe murmured, and Garp was taken aback as he saw Kobe starting to cry. "Sorry about this." Garp darkened his expression, placing a hand on Kobe's shoulder. "We are supposed to represent justice, Vice Admiral Garp. Why are we just standing by and watching this? This isn't why I joined the Marines." Kobe lifted his gaze, and with no one else around, the pink-haired boy revealed a face distorted with tears, clearly deeply affected. Kobe could hear the voices of Mary Joyce through his hockey. The loudest thoughts didn't come from the Tenri Obito showing off their collections of objects, but from the slaves, those inside the cells of the mansions and those beneath Mary Joyce, working tirelessly to keep the city functioning. They pushed levers with all their strength, like the one that had lifted them from the port below the red line. Their pain echoed in Kobe's mind, a trauma painfully similar to what he had experienced during the Manafort War. He hated being there, hearing the suffering of thousands of slaves as they screamed in pain and despair. Even when they weren't being abused or punished, an overwhelming emptiness consumed their minds, making Kobe want to flee, to no longer hear it. He was filled with fear, anger, and confusion. His feelings for the Marines had always been pure, he wanted to be a hero. But now he found himself serving people like the Tenri Obito and the world government, knowing that the Marines were merely their subordinates. "I know what you mean, Kobe. I want you to endure a little longer. We can talk about this later, but for now, there's nothing we can do against it. Maybe not yet. So I want you to go rest. I'll handle things alone, understood?" Garp said, his voice steady. "All right, Vice Admiral Garp," he murmured, and Garp began to walk away, leaving Kobe behind. Garp reached Pangaea Castle a moment later, as the kings were continuously entering to attend the meeting. He did not enter the hall. Inside, the kings were seated around a round table, with the Gorosei waiting for each one to take their place. "Well, let's begin the meeting. I called you here to start the most important session of this reverie. Most likely, there won't be another one," Saint Effenber and Venus Joe announced, drawing the attention of all the rulers. "What could be so important that we had to be summoned in the middle of the night?" one of the kings asked openly, clearly displeased. "That will be explained shortly. For now, let's start with a few important topics." Another elder spoke, and the kings refrained from further questioning. After all, they all knew they were beneath these 4 men, believing that the 5th elder had died, consumed by the comet after the events of Manafort. Unbeknownst to them, Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn was still in the room, checking the Den Mushi and the images being received from the 8 ships, preparing to inform the others before transmitting it to all the kings present at the meeting. "I want all of you to look at the papers we've placed at each of your seats," Saint Topman Warkuri instructed, and the kings picked up the sheets, pulling out the first blank page to reveal the second, which displayed the faces of 7 individuals. This. All the kings were taken aback. Why are we seeing the 7 warlords of the sea? Someone questioned. This will be the first topic. As you all know, after several incidents, such as those in Alabasta and Dressrosa, whose representatives, by the way, are not present here, we've decided to settle this matter once and for all. Therefore, I am announcing the government's decision to abolish the 7 warlords of the seas system. Not only that, but we will also be hunting down all former official members of the program. Saint Shepherd Jupiter declared, catching everyone by surprise with such a sudden announcement during a late-night meeting. Meanwhile, Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn continued watching the images calmly until he noticed some men moving strangely toward the rear of one of the ships, with the camera still pointed at Wano. There's someone approaching on a small boat. They reported in the video. Who is it? No matter, destroy the boat. Someone else ordered. Immediately, cannonballs were fired from all the ships, but Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn could no longer see what was happening. What? He's still approaching. The agents exclaimed. Sir. A den mushi on the table rang, catching the Gorosei's attention as they waited to hear the report. We are under attack. Someone is coming. The agent didn't finish his sentence before the den mushi lost connection. Simultaneously, the video feed cut out as the transmitting den mushi went offline. Clearly, all the den mushi on the ships had been destroyed at once. Could it be that they've discovered us? One of the Gorosei asked in surprise. At the same time, amidst the sea of wreckage, the waters were littered with pieces of destroyed ships, while a small boat sailed calmly through the debris. Government pests. So be it. They've all been destroyed, and now I can finally head toward the battle as well. I've been waiting to fight you, Monkey D. Luffy. The older voice spoke with a firm tone as the figure approached Wano. He was an unexpected player in the middle of a war, but powerful enough to rival the strongest. His destination was the rooftop of Onigashima. Chapter 465, The Wano War 05. Curse you all. Big Mom exclaimed as she flew through the air. Yamato and Lucy were both fighting her, Yamato in her hybrid form, and Lucy in her Gear 4th, Snakeman form. Big Mom raised her sword as she saw Kaido's daughter charging toward her, deflecting the sword strike with her cane abo. Immediately, both weapons exploded with haki, wreaking havoc across the area, creating chaos as their conquerors' haki clashed fiercely, neither side yielding. Incredible. Lucy murmured, approaching them. Something fascinating was happening, none of their strikes were making physical contact. It will take you 100 years to defeat me, brat. Big Mom growled, trying to push Yamato away. I will defeat you. Yamato snarled, holding her ground against the 4 emperors. Don't forget about me. At that moment, Lucy appeared, stretching her arm forward. Her fist zigzagged through the air before landing a powerful punch on Charlotte Linland's side, catching her off guard. Ah! Big Mom screamed, surprised, as she was sent flying down to the rooftop. Her body carved into the ground, creating a crater as she crashed. Big Mom stood up, visibly enraged and slightly injured. Zeus, Prometheus. I need you here. She yelled, realizing she was at a disadvantage fighting both Yamato and Lucy simultaneously. We're coming, Mama. The voices of the 2 homies echoed as they emerged from the hole created by Big Mom's fall, flying toward her. Let's finish these 2 once and for all. Big Mom shouted as Zeus and Prometheus prepared to fight. Yamato and Lucy watched as Big Mom jumped onto Zeus. The cloud, previously white, darkened to black with lightning crackling around it. Meanwhile, Prometheus burned hotter, shedding his usual innocent expression and transforming into something menacing. Let's go! Lucy exclaimed, charging at Big Mom. Yamato followed, unleashing her attack, Raimai hack. But Big Mom wasn't going to let them get close this time. Riding Zeus, she moved swiftly through the air, preparing a devastating thunder strike. Prometheus, meanwhile, unleashed another fiery explosion as they neared. The attacks clashed, causing massive destruction across the entire area as both sides struck relentlessly. It looks like things are getting pretty interesting over there. Luffy's voice came from Neferet, though his lips didn't move. He was on a different part of Onigashima's rooftop, facing Kaido. Kaido, in his dragon form, glared at the beast before him, teeth clenched. Red and purple flames spread across the rooftop, with Ifrit standing amidst them. You truly are a worthy opponent. I'll show you why they call me the strongest creature in the world. Kaido declared, his mouth unmoving in his dragon form. Maybe you'll lose that title today, Kaido. Luffy taunted. Don't think this fight is over yet. Kaido said as he started to move swiftly through the air. He flew to the edge of Onigashima and began circling it, creating clouds. Slowly, he wrapped the entire island in his clouds. Luffy watched intently, fully aware of what Kaido was doing, yet he made no effort to stop him. With Kaido's cloud surrounding it, All of Onigashima began to tremble and rise from the water, leaving the ships behind as the island ascended into the air. Let's make this fight more interesting. I'll crash this island right into the flower capital, Kaido announced. Ifrit watched for a moment, a mischievous grin forming. He seemed entertained by Kaido's plan. I doubt it will last long, Kaido. Luffy mocked. He knew this fight wouldn't drag on, confident that he could control Onigashima with Bippo and Lamy if necessary. Kaido then opened his mouth, preparing to unleash his fiery breath at Luffy midair. However, Luffy didn't respond with another blast of fire like before. Instead, he bent his knees, pressing his feet into the ground beneath him, which cracked under the pressure. What truly changed, though, was his back. A purple light shimmered across it. Dark wings began to emerge, spreading wide. In the next instant, Luffy shattered the ground beneath him and launched himself toward the dragon, his enormous form disappearing as he accelerated at breakneck speed using the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit. Kaido was surprised when, in the middle of charging his attack, Luffy appeared right in front of him. At that moment, he couldn't do anything as the punch struck his jaw, forcing him to lift his head and release his attack upward while trying to recover, shocked by Ifrit's ability to fly. He didn't even have time to react before feeling another blow hit him squarely, causing a sharp headache. Come on, Kaido, let's continue our fight in the sky. It doesn't matter if Onigashima is flying or not, Luffy said calmly as his opponent clenched his teeth. Everyone on the island felt it begin to rise into the sky, trembling as Onigashima moved upward. What is this? Reiju murmured while fighting her brother. Onigashima is flying. Lamy replied while battling Katakuri. He's using the same ability I have. Rebecca murmured, recognizing how Kaido was doing it, a technique she had mastered in Skypiea. Luffy hasn't given any orders about this, so let's just keep fighting. Other Straw Hats said, knowing that Luffy would contact them if there was anything important to say about it. Let's go. And so they kept fighting. In the end, it didn't take long for them to defeat all their enemies on the lower floors. Queen flew through the air, his chest bleeding after a slash from Dory and Brogy. Looks like we've won, Dory, Brogy said, watching the Calamity fall to the ground, bleeding and unconscious. All 40,000 of Kaido's men were defeated on that side, while those who had been transferred to aid Wano's 30,000 warriors also emerged victorious, ending all conflicts on the lower floors of Onigashima. We've beaten the beast pirates. Let's keep going, they shouted, while the fleet members and main crew continued fighting on the upper floors, with the main battles, except for the captains, taking place there. Meanwhile, Big Mom was still fighting Lucy and Yamato on the rooftop. Despite her overwhelming strength, everything around her seemed on the verge of exploding, but the no clear victor had emerged yet. Even though she was under pressure, fighting both opponents at once, Big Mom held her ground, becoming more aggressive with her relentless fury. Suddenly, the sky began to shine intensely, drawing even Lucy's attention. She looked up, surprised. Brother, Lucy murmured as a massive shadow appeared in the sky, emerging from the clouds. It was the figure of Luffy in his Ifrit form, facing Kaido, who had transformed into his enormous dragon form behind the dark clouds. Lightning began to crackle, and the temperature rose dramatically due to the pure fire attacks both mythical zone users unleashed. Kaido, flying through the skies at high speed, distanced himself from Luffy. Opening his mouth wide, he unleashed a blast of fire toward the ground. Quickly, Luffy flapped his dark wings and used instant transmission, disappearing into thin air and reappearing at a distance. The fire blast shot straight ahead, passing through Onigashima and hitting the sea far away, causing a massive steam explosion on the horizon. Luffy charged toward Kaido again as the dragon spun in the air, unleashing slicing winds that created hundreds of blades cutting through the sky toward his opponent. In response, Luffy formed a massive purple fireball, more than 10 meters in diameter, and hurled it forward with his arm. The fireball exploded into countless small flames that advanced against Kaido's wind blades. The flames and wind collided, causing a massive explosion and clearing the way for Luffy to continue his assault. Kaido, even in his dragon form, felt the powerful impact of Ifrit Luffy's punch once again as he reached him in the sky. The dragon roared furiously. Damn it! I'm losing to this brat, Kaido thought, gritting his teeth. I never thought this would be possible. Kaido knew that Luffy was strong, but he hadn't anticipated such an extreme situation. Not even when Luffy had beaten him before, after defeating one of the Gorosei. Back in Manafort, Luffy had unleashed a desperate and special form. But now, he had proven that the young pirate had undergone immense growth in such a short time. Here is the complete translation, maintaining all dialogue, formatting, and narrative flow as requested. I trained for an entire year to become stronger. I won't lose like this, Kaido roared, determined, as he charged at Luffy once again. Luffy also prepared himself, pulling his arm back and coating his fist with haki. Kaido, in turn, opened his mouth, focusing his haki energy there. Both advanced at the same time, and Luffy's fist and Kaido's mouth clashed in the air. But before they could touch, their conqueror's haki collided, lighting up the entire sky in a golden glow. Shockwaves spread in all directions, shaking all of Onigashima and turning the sky yellow from the intensity of the confrontation. Well, this looks quite interesting. As the two continued their power struggle, an unexpected voice echoed in the air, breaking the focus of the battle as someone descended from the sky at high speed. An unknown figure landed directly on Kaido's head without difficulty, even as Luffy and Kaido maintained their haki clash. What? Both Kaido and Luffy were stunned, turning their gaze to the person who had just appeared. You! Kaido murmured, almost in disbelief. He recognized that presence. Luffy, for his part, also stared in astonishment, trying to understand what this person was doing there. The mysterious figure crossed his arms and smiled threateningly. I heard about this battle between the two of you. I came here to see it for myself. Looks like you're having quite a bit of fun. His voice was calm but serious, and even the two four emperors knew that this person was incredibly powerful, on their level. However, the figure turned to Luffy and, with a piercing look, declared, someone challenged me directly. And, so far, you haven't come looking for me. That's a little disappointing. Luffy narrowed his eyes, keeping his attack locked in battle with Kaido, but he remained silent. The figure continued, completely ignoring Kaido. So, I came here myself to find my opponent. The stranger's eyes gleamed with a threatening light as he pointed directly at Luffy. You, Straw Hat. I want to fight you. Stop messing around with Kaido and fight me now. Otherwise. The figure began walking toward the edge of Kaido's head, preparing to jump down to Onigashima, his gaze still locked on Luffy. You and your crew will have serious problems. Don't interfere in my fight, Bullet. Or I'll crush you. Kaido shouted furiously. Bullet, still walking atop the dragon's head, simply smiled mockingly. I'm not afraid of you either, Kaido. I can beat you down if necessary. But I'm not here for you. I came for my true fight. Kaido narrowed his eyes, even more irritated, as Bullet kept his gaze fixed on Luffy. So, what do you say, Straw Hat? Will you face me, or would you prefer to have serious problems? Because if you don't... Bullet's expression darkened. I'll start hunting your crew. The clash of Luffy's and Kaido's haki continued violently, sending shockwaves through the sky. Both adversaries had reached their limit, and in that moment, they separated. Bullet, unaffected by the chaos caused by the haki clash, calmly took one final step off Kaido's head. I'm heading down. I'll wait for you on the rooftop of this flying island. And you'd better hurry. With those words, Bullet leapt off Kaido and dove toward the ground below. Big Mom, Yamato, and Lucy, still locked in their battle, immediately sensed Bullet's powerful presence as he descended toward the island. When his body hit the ground, a massive explosion of dust and smoke erupted. However, in the very next moment, a burst of haki exploded from Bullet, spreading in all directions. The force of the haki made the entire island tremble. All of Onigashima reacted to Bullet's arrival. Chapter 466, The Wano War 06. The king's haki, at the level of a four emperors, shocked everyone in Onigashima. The oppressive presence could be felt in every corner of the island, and all who sensed it knew the danger it carried. Who was this? Many members of the Straw Hat fleet felt the weight of that presence and were alarmed, though they didn't know the source of the haki. This haki. It reminds me of that guy from the prison. In the upper halls, amidst the wreckage of destroyed rooms, Zoro stood over his fallen opponent, King, who lay on the floor in his pteranodon form. He was badly injured, struggling to rise, his teeth clenched. The swordsman before him was truly powerful. Yet Zoro wasn't even paying attention to him. His gaze was fixed on the sky, his eyes narrowing as he muttered with curiosity. The aura of Bullet was etched into that haki. It was unmistakable. Even Zoro, who had been alongside Luffy at the 6th level of the prison, recognized that menacing presence. As their captain had mentioned before, he wanted to face Bullet, a legend from the past. It was no surprise that Bullet's presence now struck fear into so many. He had arrived, ready to wage war against their captain. Bullet. You're alive, you bastard. And you're here. On the rooftop, Big Mom growled, momentarily ignoring her two opponents, Yamato and Lucy. Her expression shifted to something more cautious, even for someone like her. That man was known as a monster within the crew of the Pirate King, Goldie Roger. And for good reason. He was someone everyone needed to be extremely wary of. This Four Emperors battle had just escalated to another level. The same thought crossed the minds of both women. Lucy and Yamato exchanged glances for a moment. They knew who he was, recalling the chaos of Impel Down, just like Zoro. Bullet continued releasing his haki across the area, an overwhelming wave that made the air itself vibrate. Suddenly, he stopped the pressure, completely ignoring Big Mom. His eyes turned skyward, waiting for his true opponent to finally come and face him. Above, in the sky, Kaido and Luffy were also watching the scene unfold below. Luffy sighed lightly, while Kaido, beside him, seemed lost in thought, observing the situation. "This guy is here to interfere with my fight," Kaido muttered, but suddenly he felt something strange. The great dragon, feared by all, found himself frozen, paralyzed by something he couldn't comprehend. "I'm frozen." Kaido was stunned. He could feel his body immobilized, and he only knew it because his haki warned him. He couldn't even perceive what was happening, his view of the world completely frozen. In disbelief, Kaido struggled to free himself. As soon as he regained control over his body, he realized that Luffy was no longer in front of him. Suddenly, Kaido felt his tail being grabbed by burning hands. What? Before he could react, Luffy, in his Ifrit form, had seized Kaido's tail and began to spin him through the air. The great dragon was pulled violently, swirling repeatedly through the sky. "You're not getting away from this, Kaido," Luffy declared. In the midst of the spin, Luffy hurled Kaido straight toward the ground of Onigashima. The force behind it was immense, making Kaido resemble a meteor surrounded by purple flames, hurtling toward the island at incredible speed, unable to react. The fighters on the rooftop of Onigashima, Big Mom, Yamato, and Lucy, along with Bullet observing from a corner, witnessed the impending impact and quickly braced themselves for the worst. "Brace yourselves!" Yamato shouted. The impact was devastating. Kaido collided with a rooftop, causing an explosion so massive that it lit up the night sky. The entire roof of Onigashima trembled and cracked, making the floating island shake violently before it began to descend once again. The explosion's intensity sent purple flames shooting into the sky, illuminating the skies of Wano far and wide. The force of the impact was so great that the island began to collide with Kaido's clouds, pushing Onigashima back toward the sea. "Onigashima is falling!" Some of the pirates screamed, desperate. It didn't take long for the entire island to crash into the sea again, creating enormous waves that pushed all the docked ships and smaller islands in the fleet back into the ocean. The massive impact stirred the waters, sending shockwaves through the surrounding seas. What's happening now? Inside the corridors of Onigashima, many pirates and warriors asked the same question, struggling to stand after being thrown around by the impact. "Lami." Luffy's voice suddenly echoed through the den-den-mushi of the crew. Lami, who was in the middle of fighting Kitakuri, glanced toward the den-den-mushi. "Luffy?" she murmured. "I want you to bring me in front of Bullet. And put Lucy to fight Kaido." Luffy's command was clear. Without hesitation, Lami activated her Operation Fruit model, modification human ability. With her haki, she sensed every presence on the rooftop of Onigashima and made the necessary changes immediately, as her devil fruits range once again covered the entire island. Lucy vanished without warning and reappeared right in front of Luffy. She was a bit confused as she met her brother's gaze. "Listen, Lucy. I want you to fight Kaido. I'll handle Bullet. And you too, Yamato, fight Big Mom and win." Luffy's voice was loud and commanding. Yamato nodded at his words. Even though she couldn't see clearly due to the cloud of smoke created by Kaido's body crashing into Onigashima, she knew Big Mom was right in front of her. As for Luffy, before his sister could say anything, he disappeared from Lucy's side and reappeared amidst the chaos elsewhere on the rooftop. The entire area was blanketed in the same thick dust cloud. Despite the obscured view, Bullet's presence was unmistakable. He stood there, arms crossed, a satisfied expression on his face as he watched Luffy appear as if through teleportation. Luffy, now back in his human form, locked eyes with his adversary, his expression serious. "It's good to see you're finally here, brat. I thought the boy who challenged me back in Impel Down had chickened out after all the talk," Bullet spoke calmly, his tone laced with provocation. Luffy stared at him without wavering. "I'll admit. I never imagined I'd run into you here. But it doesn't matter. If we're going to fight, then let's finish this. That's what I like to hear. After all, I've been waiting for this moment for a year." Bullet pointed at Luffy's straw hat, a mocking grin on his face. "I want to see if you're truly worthy of that hat." Luffy's gaze didn't falter. "Well, this hat won't belong to me forever. But I will be the man who finds the one piece left by Roger." Bullet raised his chin slightly and gave a disdainful smile. "And what if I told you I know where the one piece is? Would you want me to tell you? If you manage to beat me?" Luffy didn't hesitate. He shook his head firmly. "No. I'll find it myself. I won't need any shortcuts." Bullet's smile widened slightly. "Good to hear that. Maybe you're not so bad after all." He took a step forward, his presence growing heavier. Now, let's see if you really have the strength to back it up. In the next moment, without a second thought, an explosion of haki erupted from both sides. The two immense energies clashed with a force far more violent than anything seen before, creating a shockwave that cleared all the dust around them. The sky above Onigashima shone intensely from the confrontation, and the entire island trembled once more from the sheer power of the two warriors. On one side, Yamato and Big Mom watched the chaos unfold, their eyes locked on the battle taking place. The wind howled, whipping through their hair as they stood ready for anything. On the other side, Lucy gazed toward her brother. Kaido lay buried in the ground, now in his hybrid form, visibly frustrated. Kaido clenched his teeth, slowly rising to his feet. There was a pained expression on his face. He spat blood, trying to make sense of what had just happened. This kid. He hurt me. Kaido muttered, placing a hand on his chest. Blood dripped from his mouth, evidence of an internal injury. He stood in silence for a moment, trying to process it. His mind raced with questions, but one thought echoed louder than the rest. I froze. Suddenly, I couldn't move. What did he do? Kaido knew Luffy had two devil fruit, the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit, which could multiply, and the mythical Ifrit fruit. But the ability Luffy had just used baffled him. Kaido had no idea that Luffy possessed the ability to manipulate time, something he would have deemed absurd if he knew. But his ignorance made him even more frustrated. He realized that if Luffy could approach him undetected, without giving him time to react, things would get dangerous. Kaido clenched his fists, his frustration mounting as he glanced toward the explosive battle happening in the distance between Luffy and Bullet. That frustration quickly turned into anger. That brat. He abandoned me to fight someone else. Kaido's blood boiled with rage. To him, it was an insult. His gaze shifted to Lucy, who stood watching the battle from afar. Slowly, Lucy turned her eyes toward Kaido, locking her gaze on her new opponent. You're going to fight me, brat? Kaido commented, his tone dismissive. He didn't know much about Lucy's strength, but he knew she had fought Big Mom alongside Yamato, and now Yamato was battling the old hag on her own. Yes. I'll fight you in Luffy's place. Lucy replied, stepping into her normal combat stance. Fine, then. I'll finish you off first. Then I'll go after your brother. Kaido growled, lifting his massive Kanabo, now crackling with purple thunder haki. Without hesitation, he charged at Lucy with incredible speed. Lucy didn't back down. Instead, she coated her fist with Conqueror's haki and swung it toward Kaido's Kanabo. When their attacks collided, there was a massive haki explosion, shaking the entire area violently. Meanwhile, Big Mom charged at Yamato with fury. You think you can defeat me on your own? You arrogant brat. Big Mom roared, her voice booming across the battlefield. I will finish you, Big Mom. Yamato responded firmly. Both weapons, Yamato's Kanabo and Big Mom's sword, clashed, each infused with Conqueror's haki, creating another devastating explosion. The shockwaves from their clash spread across the rooftop of Onigashima, shaking the entire island. The rooftop had transformed into a three-front battlefield, with 6 Emperor's-level warriors fighting simultaneously. It was an unprecedented sight. The entire island trembled from the ongoing battles. Down below, people on the lower floors of Onigashima rushed toward the upper levels, desperately trying to escape the chaos as the strongest warriors continued their fierce clashes. In the shadows, several Cypher Pulse Zero agents, their faces hidden behind masks, moved discreetly through the island. This confirms our fears. They're fighting each other. One of the agents commented. Yes. And it looks like the battle has become even more intense. But who is that other person up there? Another agent asked, referring to Douglas Bullet's presence on the rooftop. The agents didn't immediately recognize Bullet, but they knew an extremely powerful figure was also present. Quick. Report what's happening. We've lost contact with the ships stationed outside of Wano. One of the agents instructed. Something tells me it was that man who destroyed them. He appeared out of nowhere. Coming from the sky. The agents began transmitting the information through their Den Mushi, updating their superiors on the situation. Understood. There are only a few people who can fight at that level. But that doesn't matter right now. The voice of Saturn, one of the Gorosei, came from the other end of the transmission. Our main forces are almost there. Once we arrive, we'll destroy all of them. Yes, sir. The agents responded in unison. Keep monitoring. Track the status of the fight and keep us updated. Saturn ordered. If possible, eliminate the targets before our forces arrive. Understood. The agents ended the transmission. The masked leader of Cypher Pulse Zero agent turned to his fellow agents. Let's move. We need to eliminate the targets before the main forces arrive. He said with authority. Even if it results in our deaths? One of the agents questioned. Yes. The leader confirmed without hesitation. We still have to fulfill our mission. The agents nodded silently, accepting the risk without complaint. They moved swiftly through the shadows of the island, focused entirely on their mission. They had two primary targets. The first was Monkey D. Luffy, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. That wasn't a surprise. But the second target was Monkey D. Lucy, someone the world government considered just as dangerous, especially due to her connection to a devil fruit linked to Nika. These two must be eliminated. At any cost. Chapter 467, The 10407. It seems things are getting interesting on the rooftop. Lamy commented as the Conqueror's haki emanated from the rooftop of Onigashima, before dodging an attack from Katakuri. Katakuri possessed the Mochi fruit model, springy human devil fruit, the Mochi fruit, which allowed him to create countless shapes in all forms within the space created by Lamy's Operation Fruit model, modification human. Standing at 5 meters tall, Katakuri ran through the space, his speed surpassing the sound barrier, aiming to catch her. But the moment he reached her position, Lamy vanished. However, Katakuri immediately used his fruit to launch an attack in the spot where she was about to reappear. Lamy reappeared, surrounded by attacks infused with armament haki coming straight at her. She quickly drew her sword, coating it in haki to block all the Mochi fists heading her way. The attacks were neutralized in an instant as Lamy effortlessly deflected each one. This guy can see the future. That's why he attacked me before I even teleported. Lamy muttered, her gaze fixed on her opponent with a surprised expression. His observation haki was highly impressive, a level beyond anything Luffy had mentioned. Though it wasn't something her current crew couldn't overcome. Katakuri stared back with narrowed eyes. Beyond her immense haki mastery, her devil fruit made her even more troublesome. Without saying a word, he vanished, soaring upward toward Lamy. Lamy watched him, pulling her arm back as if preparing to strike. Katakuri mimicked her, pulling his massive fist backward, enlarging it in a manner reminiscent of Luffy's Gear Third, before launching it toward the Surgeon of Death. Before his punch could land and shatter the ground beneath them, Lamy had already vanished. Katakuri anticipated this, sending several Mochi fists from his back toward the spot where she reappeared. Yet, instead of taking a defensive stance, Lamy's sword morphed into a weapon coated in armament haki, cutting through the incoming attacks. The difference in haki was obvious. Lamy sliced through each of Katakuri's attacks with ease, her blade carving a path straight toward the Charlotte family's strongest sibling, striking him directly. His body was hurled to the ground, leaving a trail of blood as his colossal attack disintegrated. Lamy watched from a distance, having teleported away after her attack triggered an explosion upon Katakuri's impact with the ground. She stood still, observing. None of the other fighters in that part of the battlefield dared to interfere, though she noticed many members of the Charlotte family watching with growing concern. Their strongest brother had been taken down in such a manner. But Lamy knew it wasn't over yet. This. Katakuri emerged from the smoke cloud, his expression confused. Despite his ability to see the future and his superior speed, he realized that Lamy hadn't even shown her full strength. She had given him the impression that she couldn't keep up without her fruit powers. Even so, he understood one thing clearly. His haki was weaker than hers. Blood trickled from his forehead as he cautiously observed her. Lamy stood there, calm and collected, while they both remained within her room. This time, Lamy made the first move. She disappeared. Not through teleportation, but by using instant transmission and her natural speed. Katakuri reacted swiftly, covering his arm entirely with haki to defend himself. Yet, Lamy appeared behind him with her sword raised. And his arm was severed, falling to the ground. Brother Katakuri. Several members of the Charlotte family cried out in shock at the sight of Katakuri losing his arm, the limb still imbued with haki as it hit the floor. This. Katakuri stared at the severed arm, surprised to see it still twitching as if under his command. It wasn't cut normally. It was removed by the Operation Fruit model, modification human. Let's end this once and for all. Lamy said calmly, stepping toward him, her sword still poised to strike. You're stronger than I imagined. So I'll fight even harder with everything I've got. Katakuri commented as Mochi began to form where his severed arm had been, creating a new limb coated in haki. Well, it seems I can't just remove your limbs. You can use your devil fruit. Lamy said as she prepared to continue the battle, with Katakuri doing the same. At that moment, the entire island began to shake as the force of 6 conquerors' haki-infused attacks collided in 3 different spots on the rooftop of Onigashima, generating an even greater impact than anything before. Yamato clashed with Big Mom, Lucy fought Kaido, and Luffy battled Bullet, making both Lamy and Katakuri glance upward in surprise. Things are getting very interesting up there. Maybe I should join them soon. Lamy commented, then turned her gaze back to Kitakuri and charged forward without hesitation. Kitakuri swiftly dodged to the side as Lami's sword sliced through the air where his head had been, narrowly avoiding decapitation thanks to his foresight. Kitakuri quickly stepped back, then advanced again, awakening his devil fruit power, surprising Lami as the ground beneath them began to transform into mochi. So he can do that too. She murmured before using her fruit to teleport away as thousands of attacks converged on her position. She reappeared at a distance, but even the floor beneath her feet turned into mochi, with Kitakuri giving her no respite. The relentless attacks continued until Lami decided to go on the offensive. She teleported directly in front of her opponent, using both fists coated in concentrated hockey to prevent him from cutting her down, causing the entire area to explode with red lightning from their armament clash. Kitakuri was pleased to have blocked her attack, but unbeknownst to Lami, the severed arm from earlier was still under his mental control. He quickly reinforced it with layers of hardened mochi and launched it toward her. Kitakuri advanced, aiming to catch her off guard, his mochi arm barreling toward her. Lami watched it approach, a smile spreading across her face. Kitakuri, expecting to surprise her, was the one caught off guard by her expression. As if she had anticipated his move all along. She simply lifted a finger and switched their positions using her fruit at the last second. Kitakuri felt his own hockey-infused punch slam into him violently, sending him flying into a wall as he spat blood. Once again, Lami stood calmly on the ground as the mochi around her began to collapse into a sticky paste. Don't think you're the only one who can see the future. Lami taunted as Kitakuri emerged from the destroyed wall, frustration etched on his face. He couldn't say a word, glancing around at his siblings and comrades still fighting. He had to fulfill his duty. In the next moment, he exploded with Conqueror's hockey, surging toward Lami. You have hockey, but you can't even use it like the fighters on the rooftop of Onigashima right now. Lami remarked, preparing herself for the next clash. She charged with her sword, while Kitakuri unleashed a massive mochi fist, shaped like a giant hand. The giant fist and Lami's sword collided in the next instant, and Kitakuri watched in shock as his hockey shattered. Lami had decided to use Conqueror's hockey coating for the first time. No. Kitakuri could only murmur as he saw the blade advancing toward him, witnessing a future he could no longer change. The blade reached him. Meanwhile, Reija was in the middle of a fierce battle with her brother. The two clashed above the room, using moonwalk and instant transmission to stay airborne as they exchanged fiery kicks and blows. Around them, the entire Germa force lay defeated. Every member of their family, except for the two of them, had fallen to the ground after being taken down by Reiju, even as she fought Sanji at the same time. You've really grown strong, brother. Reija commented with a faint smile. So have you, sister. Sanji replied, panting. After everything our father did to you. To us. When he called us failures. In the end, you surpassed us all. Lami narrowed her eyes but kept the smile. She managed to push them back, and Sanji fell to the ground for a moment. Both kicks connected again after they advanced, their strikes colliding once more. At that moment, flames and hockey exploded between them, destroying the area around until they both reached their limits. They both pulled back once again, catching their breath. Let's continue this. Lami said, preparing her legs with the red flames of the phoenix. Sanji also allowed his blue flames to burn even stronger, and both were about to charge again. But it was at that moment that something unexpected happened. A blade rushed through the ground, carving a path while cutting the air. The sword quickly expanded, carrying someone impaled on it. The figure was violently thrown against the wall, passing right between Lami and Sanji. However, the blade didn't stop there. It continued slicing through the walls until it left Onigashima, extending as a devastating straight line. The person pinned to the wall was Kitakuri. He was in shock, his body pierced by the blade in that manner. Before he could react, an immense pain filled him, making him scream as bolts of energy began to crackle from his body, causing internal damage that was clearly visible. Kitakuri screamed intensely, his voice echoing throughout the area. Brother Kitakuri. Several members of the Charlotte family exclaimed once again, but now with far more surprise than before, seeing Kitakuri screaming in pain, something they had never witnessed. Even Sanji widened his eyes, watching Big Mom's most powerful commander being defeated in such a way. Kitakuri's body began to soften, his arm melting into mochi, while all the other mochi constructs around them started to disintegrate. He could barely stand. The sword that had pierced him began to retract, sliding out of his body and returning to where it had come from. Kitakuri fell on his back to the ground, unconscious, completely defeated after taking a direct blow from the awakened Operation Fruit model, modification human. The place fell into complete silence for a while, broken only by the tremors caused by the ongoing battle on the rooftop. Lami sheathed her sword and slowly approached the spot where Kitakuri had fallen. Her cold and calculating gaze showed no emotion. Rage narrowed her eyes, staring directly at Lami. "I see you're still standing," Lami taunted. "I thought you were better than this. Don't get cocky, you emo woman." Rage snapped with irritation. Before the conversation could continue, Sanji, who had been observing the scene, took a breath to say something. But when he looked at Lami, his eyes sparkled with admiration. "So beautiful," Sanji murmured, with a love-struck expression. However, before he could finish his thought, a kick hit him square inches the face. Bam! Sanji was sent flying violently into the wall, leaving a trail of dust behind him. "Aren't you a married man? How can you hit on another woman, especially a married one, you idiot?" Reiju muttered angrily. She turned to Lami with a firm gaze. "I went easy on him because he's my brother. But I'll end this quickly now. So don't get too full of yourself, woman," Reiju declared, advancing towards Sanji. Meanwhile, Lami remained standing still, observing the chaos around her. Her fight was over. She ignored all the hateful glares from the members of the Charlotte family. Despite their anger, none of them dared to move forward. Everyone was either busy with their own battles or too afraid to face Lami directly. After all, she had just defeated the most powerful member of Big Mom's fleet, without a single scratch on her body. Chapter 468, The Wano War 08. The fight between Reiju and her brother continued, while Sanji gritted his teeth under the overwhelming pressure his sister was putting on him. Even using all his strength, he was being flung across the rooms inside Onigashima. "Damn. I won't last long like this," Sanji murmured with serious difficulty, as a sudden light appeared. Not from the direction he came from, but from the ceiling. "It's over, brother." Sanji heard his sister blow through the ceiling, catching him off guard with her speed. He immediately tried to counter her attack by striking back. Flames clashed again as their knees collided, generating intense heat that spread in all directions, while both siblings struggled for dominance. But it didn't take long for Sanji's eyes to widen in shock when he heard the sound of wings, followed by the cry of a bird. His gaze locked onto his sister as she entered the hybrid form of her devil fruit, and all the heat and pressure turned against him. "I've lost." It was the last thing he said before his body was hurled backward with such force that it shattered the floors of Onigashima. He crashed through multiple levels, burning like a meteor until he finally hit the ground, cracking the floor beneath him. "What is that?" Voices rose in confusion as the sound of footsteps echoed, people rushing toward the site of the explosion. "I don't know. It just fell from the sky." A long-nosed man approached cautiously, accompanied by a reindeer, both staring at the scene in shock. "What are you two standing there for?" Alvida walked up to Usopp and Chopper, both still gawking at the explosion. Sanji was too exhausted to comprehend his situation, but as he opened his eyes, he saw the silhouettes of those standing above him. His gaze moved from Chopper to Usopp and finally stopped on Alvida, his eyes widening. "I'm in heaven. I'm seeing an angel," he murmured softly, before all eyes turned toward him. "He doesn't look well." "Who is he?" Chopper asked. Before anyone could answer, Sanji suddenly sprang to his feet, his head comically larger than normal, his eyes shaped like hearts. "An angel!" he shouted, only to be struck by Alvida's mace in response, startled by the strange man screaming at her. Sanji flew backward, crashing through walls one after another as Alvida instinctively used Haki in her swing, not holding back, nearly killing him on the spot. "Did you just kill him?" Chopper cried out in panic, while Usopp stood there with his mouth agape, stunned. "He approached me in such a disrespectful way. I'm a married woman. Did you forget that?" Alvida said, adjusting her hat as she rested her mace on her shoulder. Neither Usopp nor Chopper said another word, deciding it was best to keep quiet. They quickly joined the crowd of soldiers advancing toward the upper floors, leaving a battered Sanji behind. Meanwhile, Reiju returned to the main hall, walking toward Lumi, who was standing in the same spot. But now with Kitakuri's severed head by her side, though his body was nowhere to be seen. "Did you kill him?" Reiju asked, raising an eyebrow as she approached and glanced at the still head. However, she could sense with her Haki that he wasn't dead. "I had to cut off his head," Lami explained. "Someone threw a mirror near his body, and someone else emerged from it to retrieve him. I was distracted and only had time to sever his head before the body disappeared completely into the mirror." "That's quite unusual," Reiju commented. "Luffy mentioned someone with that kind of power among Big Mom's pirates." Lami nodded. There were a few abilities they had been warned about that could catch them off guard. Luffy had specifically mentioned two members of the Charlotte family, Charlotte Brûlée, who possessed the mirror fruit, and Charlotte Pudding, Sanji's wife, who could alter people's memories by touching them. "Anyway, we just need to wait for the others to finish their fights. It won't take long," Lami said as she watched the simultaneous battles unfolding around them. An explosion of ice erupted on the other side as Cracker backed away from Kuina, using his sword to freeze the area. Damn irritating power. Cracker murmured as he clapped his hands, generating more and more biscuit soldiers to fight against Kuina. The biscuits began to freeze with their first steps as Kuina pointed her sword, emitting an icy mist. In the next moment, a dozen biscuit soldiers were shattered. Kuina noticed that her ice was highly effective against her opponent's creations. After all, their weakness was water. By freezing them, she could easily break them, which quickly became a serious problem for Cracker as he tried to retreat, watching his soldiers get destroyed one by one. Kuina then charged directly at him. Cracker raised his sword to strike her, but she infused her blade with hockey and clashed with him head-on. The hockey struggle began, but it was already clear that it wouldn't last long. Cracker could feel himself losing to Kuina, who stood before him without breaking a sweat, effortlessly pushing him back. Is she really this strong? Cracker murmured, his gaze falling on his strongest brother's severed head lying on the ground in the distance. The sight filled him with rage, realizing they were losing. You killed members of Skypiea during your escape. Don't think this will be easy for you. If the captain were in my place, he wouldn't forgive you. You'd already be dead. Kuina calmly stated. The next instant, Cracker was violently thrown backward, slamming into a wall and disappearing into the rubble. Kuina noticed him summoning more biscuit soldiers, while a crowd began pouring in through the opening his body had created. So be it. Kuina placed her sword behind her back as she generated an intense icy force before releasing it forward. A massive ice dragon materialized, growling as it charged toward the biscuit soldiers. Its enormous mouth easily devoured several of them as its massive head crashed through the wall. Roar! Cracker's exclamation was heard just before the giant dragon struck him, shattering his defenses. Ugh! Cracker was already injured from Kuina's previous blow, and now the dragon's attack left him even more battered. His body was bleeding, and as he tried to stand, the ground beneath him suddenly froze, trapping him in place. His eyes darted around, spotting someone moving at high speed using instant transmission. Cracker barely had time to react before he saw Kuina rapidly approaching. In the next moment, she struck him in the chest, causing blood to gush in all directions. But before the blood could hit the ground, it froze midair, still connected to Cracker's body. He, too, froze entirely, his face locked in an expression of pain, the open wound on his chest visible as he turned into an ice statue. Kuina stood at a distance, turning to face the frozen body of Cracker. It's over, she remarked, as if the entire fight had been effortless. Slowly, she sheathed her sword until it clicked into place. Just then, something unexpected happened. The ice, now smooth and reflective, mirrored the room around them. From within that reflection, a hand emerged. A long-nosed woman appeared, stepping out of the ice's surface. Brother Katakuri. His head was cut off. The woman's voice trembled as tears streamed down her face. She quickly became hysterical upon seeing Katakuri's headless body, her expression turning wild with despair. It was Brûlé, now desperate to save her defeated brother Cracker. She began pulling at his frozen body, trying to drag him through the mirror embedded in the ice. But Kuina was already aware of what was happening. The moment Brûlé tried to pull Cracker into the mirror, her hand began to freeze. Kuina, controlling the ice with her powers, made it spread over Brûlé's body. Don't think you can take him in front of me, Kuina stated coldly. Brûlé barely had time to react before she, too, was frozen, her tear-streaked face paralyzed in ice. Kuina's powers allowed her to freeze anything in contact with the ice she created. Kuina approached the frozen woman, grabbing her partially trapped body and pulling her fully out of the mirror. She placed Brûlé's frozen form next to Cracker's statue. One less. Kuina muttered, her voice devoid of emotion. Before any action could be taken, everything started to shake. The ice around Kuina seemed to crack under the tremors, and she looked up at the ceiling. Looks like they're fighting for real up there, she commented, as the battle between the four emperors sent violent tremors across the entire island with each of their powerful blows. All the members of Cypher Pol Zero Agent were hovering in the skies above Onigashima, observing the unfolding battle between three fronts, each combatant striking with the overwhelming presence of Conqueror's Haki. Yamato charged toward Big Mom's sword once again, while the dark cloud and blazing sun raged around the battlefield, using their respective elements against her. Yamato attempted to shield herself with ice barriers, but they weren't always effective, as both fire and lightning could easily break through and cause destruction. Even so, it was clear that Yamato was losing ground in her confrontation with the Empress. Soon enough, you'll fall, brat. Big Mom laughed, fully intending to crush the insect that dared challenge her alone. Well, looks like I have no choice, Yamato murmured from a distance, breathing heavily. The area around her was chaotic. Electric energy crackled, flames burned fiercely, and ice coated the ground in thick layers. The rooftop of Onigashima was riddled with holes, evidence of the fierce battle they had been waging. Yamato stood in her hybrid form, fully aware that her beast form wouldn't be enough to win. She would need to go beyond that. Tap into something even more powerful. So be it, she said quietly, closing her eyes. Big Mom watched her for a moment, curiosity flickering across her face. Humphrey. What a shame. Looks like you're planning something. What does that brat think she's going to do? Does she really believe I'd fear her just because she's Kaido's daughter? I'll rip out her soul, even if her father disagrees. Big Mom declared with a cruel smile. But suddenly, a mist began to form around Yamato, slowly enveloping her body. The temperature plummeted, and the area around her started to freeze rapidly. Even fire and electricity struggled against the chilling cold. What's going on? Big Mom's surprise was evident as she realized that, somehow, Yamato was growing stronger. Boom. The small mist surrounding Yamato exploded into a massive frozen hurricane, forcing Big Mom to step back. The entire area was transformed into ice, the storm spiraling upward into the sky, drawing attention from everyone. Even Kaido. Yamato? Kaido muttered, momentarily distracted before deflecting a strike from Luffy, who had taken on his snakeman form. Big Mom kept her distance, waiting to see what would happen next. Snow swirled into the sky, forming a massive white cloud that shone brightly against the dark backdrop of Onigashima. Bolts of Conqueror's Haki shot out in every direction as Yamato's new form emerged from within the storm. Big Mom's eyes widened in disbelief. Yamato was now in her awakened mythical zone form. Let's continue. Yamato said again, her voice echoing through the mist like a haunting whisper. However, her voice was different now. Distorted, icy, cold, like the embodiment of winter itself. The entire area around her began to freeze over rapidly. The battlefield had become a frozen wasteland. Chapter 469, The Wano War 09. It seems things are getting quite interesting up there. Zoro commented as he fought directly against King. Their battle was at its peak. King, now transformed into his hybrid pterodactyl form, had his back ablaze, a characteristic of his Lunarian race, as he tried to attack Zoro. However, the swordsman skillfully dodged the attack, causing King's blows to hit the ground and explode with force. Zoro moved back a few meters, keeping his swords firmly in hand, one of them held between his teeth. You're not even taking this seriously. King muttered, his pride wounded as he noticed Zoro still holding back from using the full power of his devil fruit, especially his feared Conqueror's Haki. Maybe I don't need it. Zoro responded calmly. He wasn't one to insult his opponents, but he truly believed he was too strong for this fight. Even so, he wouldn't underestimate King. Zoro wanted to face one of the four emperors directly, but since Luffy had instructed him to deal with King, he had no complaints. Quickly, King spread his flaming wings and flew towards Zoro, who charged forward as well. The two collided with brutal force, Zoro's swords wrapped in armament Haki and King's beak reinforced with the same energy. King's flames and Zoro's blades clashed in a devastating explosion. However, King began to sense his imminent defeat when he saw Zoro emitting a red and black glow, the characteristic energy of his Econ, Odin, flowing from his swords. Zoro pressed forward with even greater strength, pushing King back. A cry of pain echoed as the energies struck King's chest, making him bleed. He was sent flying through several rooms, destroying walls and columns as his body crashed through the structures, shaking Onigashima with the force of the attack. Zoro landed calmly on the ground, observing the destruction he had caused. Suddenly, an explosion echoed, and King emerged once more from the rubble. His wings were even larger and more engulfed in flames. Well, let's end this, Zoro declared, as his red aura shone more intensely. The energy of Odin flowed not only from his swords but from his entire body, as if they were extensions of his very will. King roared, charging again. The flames surrounding him were so intense that anyone who got too close would be burned. But Zoro was no ordinary man. Sandro, Zoro murmured, preparing his final strike. The entire room began to burn with the intensity of the energies emanating from both warriors. Odin will! Zoro exclaimed, advancing with his three swords glowing red. King charged as well, his body completely covered in armament Haki armor. The swords released bursts of energy as Zoro charged forward. In the next instant, King and Zoro collided once again. The impact was devastating. King's flames and Odin's energy clashed like two natural forces vying for dominance. The pressure was so immense that no other combatant could get near. They couldn't even be seen anymore as the energies engulfed their bodies, leaving only the two forces colliding with no sign of King or Zoro. King appeared slightly stunned. As they continued clashing, Zoro's red aura began to overpower King's flames. The energy pierced through the fire, advancing with overwhelming force. At the end of the strike, Zoro emerged on the other side, his sword still glowing intensely. He landed firmly on the ground as the energy covering the area began to dissipate. King, on the other hand, fell. The flames on his back slowly diminished until they extinguished completely. King appeared a moment later, smoke rising from his body as he lay on the ground. His chest was bleeding from 2 deep cuts inflicted by Zoro's previous strike. Though he didn't look severely injured on the outside, Zoro's attack had caused internal damage, which was why King collapsed, unable to continue. So, it's over, Zoro remarked, sheathing his swords. He had defeated a man worth billions of Baileys with relative ease. Why? King's voice emerged in that moment, prompting Zoro to slowly step out of the shadows, his expression serious as he approached Kaido's man. You're still awake? That's really impressive, Zoro said, approaching calmly and studying him further. Why didn't you kill me? King asked, panting. He knew Zoro had enough power to finish him off right there. Because my captain asked all of us to spare you, Zoro answered without hesitation. King raised an eyebrow, surprised. Your captain won't be able to defeat Kaido, he stated with unshakable faith. Zoro looked at King seriously. You talk as if you're still trapped in Kaido's shadow. But Luffy has already surpassed your captain a long time ago. Man, understand that, Zoro said before turning his gaze toward the destruction above them. Hey, can you tell me how to get to the upper floors? Zoro asked in a calm tone. King, still processing what he had just heard, couldn't immediately respond. He was confused by Zoro's demeanor but shrugged. All right. Just stay there. I'm going to check on the others, Zoro said before walking away. He calmly moved a bit further from the fallen king, then bent his knees before leaping upward, breaking through the ceiling, confident he would easily reach his destination. Quickly, he disappeared, blasting through walls one after another to clear a path. Meanwhile, at that same moment, Hugo was locked in an intense fight against Jack. Both were engaged in a fierce confrontation. A massive stone fist, coated in hockey, clashed with the head of the mammoth in his hybrid form. Jack, too, was enveloped in hockey, making the impact even more powerful. The resulting explosion shook the surrounding walls, leaving Jack somewhat surprised by the strength of the man in front of him. Well, it looks like the fights are wrapping up. You're falling, one by one. I don't want to be the last to finish off my opponent. Hugo spoke calmly as he observed Jack. Don't get so full of yourself, man, Jack yelled, charging forward once again. The sound of his stomping echoed through the room as he used his hockey to reinforce his strikes. The fight continued, with both of them destroying walls as they moved through several rooms, leaving the main hall, just like Zoro and King. Jack threw his massive body against Hugo, who was pushed through several rooms until he began to feel the ground giving way beneath his feet. Hugo tried to stop Jack's advance, but the weight and strength of the mammoth were brutal. Suddenly, Hugo's body began to glow. He entered his hybrid form, with crystals emerging all over his body. He started to halt Jack's charge by digging his feet into the ground, something very similar to what Luffy had done in Jaya when he fought against Bellamy. You're strong, but I can handle you, Hugo murmured, shifting the earth and concrete beneath his feet. Jack, caught off guard, felt the ground beneath him move. The floor trembled and cracked, causing the giant mammoth to lose his balance. Hugo seized the opening and, in the next moment, unleashed a devastating punch, coated in hockey. His fist struck Jack squarely, forcing him to dig into the ground with the force of the impact. The punch was so powerful that it cracked the floor, creating a crater. Ah, you bastard! Jack exclaimed, but he remained motionless, unable to move as Hugo continued to attack him. However, Hugo gave his opponent no chance to recover. He kept pressing him, forcing the mammoth to stay on the defensive until the massive creature began to break down, losing strength. Meanwhile, in another room, Black Maria was battling Robin. Both were in their giant forms, with Robin still in her human form, crossing her arms in front of a giant version of herself created by her devil fruit powers. The fight was becoming more and more intense. Robin was pressing the Spider-Woman relentlessly, giving her no room for counterattacks. Both women were surprised when, suddenly, the wall of the room was destroyed. Jack crashed through the stones and debris, landing in the middle of the room where they were fighting. Black Maria's eyes widened. Jack? She exclaimed, incredulous. What's going on? Before they could make sense of what had happened, Hugo appeared right in front of Jack. With a powerful kick, he sent the mammoth crashing into the wall again, which exploded in a cloud of dust and rubble. Jack was hurled away, destroying everything in his path. Hugo stopped for a moment, looking at the two women. But he didn't care much about their presence and continued advancing toward Jack. Robin observed the scene but remained focused on her fight against Black Maria. Jack, now severely injured, tried to stand, but was struck again. Hugo leapt and delivered a devastating punch to his weakest point, His stomach, his fist, coated in hockey, hit Jack with such force that it felt like a giant's blow. The impact was brutal, causing an explosion that shook the entire floor. Jack crashed through several rooms before finally falling to the ground, defeated. That guy is tough to bring down, Hugo murmured as he approached the unconscious mammoth, shrinking back to his normal size, though he was still much taller than Jack. Even though Hugo hadn't emerged unscathed, his face was covered in blood, he showed no signs of exhaustion. Calmly, he took out a pair of sea-stone handcuffs and placed them on Jack, ensuring he couldn't transform again. With Jack restrained, Hugo grabbed his opponent's leg and began dragging him through the destroyed walls, unconcerned about the noise or debris around them. Suddenly, a nearby wall exploded. A gigantic body smashed through the rubble and collided hard with the remaining structure, causing another wave of destruction. Lola. Smoothie growled furiously, trying to pull herself together. She couldn't believe she had been thrown so far by her own sister. Lola appeared in the distance, walking with an arrogant smile while resting her hammer on her shoulder. "What's wrong, big sister? Having some trouble?" Lola taunted, crossing her arms. "You'll pay for this, Lola," Smoothie shouted, even more enraged. Hugo watched the scene for a moment and shrugged. "Not my problem," he murmured before continuing to drag Jack through the destroyed walls, disappearing from the area. Meanwhile, a few soldiers approached Smoothie. "Ms. Smoothie? Ms. Smoothie? Are you all right?" they asked, concerned. Smoothie, still furious, glared at the soldiers. With a cold stare, she advanced toward them. Without a second thought, she grabbed one of the soldiers by the neck. "What are you doing, ma'am?" they screamed in desperation. The next moment, Smoothie began to drain the soldier's life force, growing in size and becoming even stronger. "You'll pay for this, Lola." Smoothie growled again as she continued to grow, becoming nearly as large as Jack. Without wasting time, Smoothie charged toward her sister, determined to make Lola pay for humiliating her. Chapter 470, The Wano War 10. "Damn it. She's gotten much faster," Big Mom muttered as Yamato dashed around her, leaving a trail of icy mist in her wake. Her speed increased so much that she slid effortlessly across the ice she created with each step, her paws gliding over the frozen surface. Yamato was so fast that even Big Mom struggled to keep up, her eyes barely tracking the movements. "Prometheus, attack her," Big Mom commanded as the scorching sun hummy prepared, heating up before unleashing waves of fire toward the path where Yamato was sliding across the ice. The searing heat surged toward Yamato, who lifted her gaze, seeing the flames tearing through the ice she had created. Without hesitation, she began to dodge at high speed, weaving through the burning landscape. Even as the flames devoured the ice, Yamato swiftly recreated her frozen path, effortlessly maneuvering through the inferno. Despite the intense blaze visible from the island's ceiling, Yamato didn't stop. Though her sliding motion appeared to be in a straight line, she could instantly change direction, zigzagging between Prometheus's fiery attacks with incredible precision. Her rapid movements brought her ever closer to Big Mom from the side. The Empress tried to defend herself, but it was too late. As Yamato closed the distance, the trap tightened. Big Mom barely had time to raise her head before Yamato's Kanabo struck her square inches the face. Big Mom grunted, eyes wide with shock, as the weapon smashed into her face before she could raise her sword in defense. The impact, enhanced by Yamato's haki, distorted Big Mom's expression as her powerful body buckled under the blow. Blood dripped from her nose. The force of the impact was so immense that it twisted the four Emperor's enormous body backward. With a roar of pain, Big Mom crashed heavily to the ground, the earth cracking beneath her from the sheer force of Yamato's attack. "You damn brat!" Big Mom yelled furiously, rising from the rubble with debris scattered around her. "Mama!" Prometheus cried out, alarmed. Zeus, equally shocked, began releasing furious bolts of lightning toward Yamato. However, in her awakened form, Yamato glided effortlessly over the icy waves she created beneath her feet. The frost rapidly spread across the ground, freezing everything in its path. In the blink of an eye, she vanished from sight, her speed so blinding that it seemed as though she had evaporated into thin air. Her movements were so fast that even Zeus's lightning bolts couldn't hit her. Yamato moved like a silver blur, crafting ice ramps and sliding along them at a breathtaking pace, faster than sound, faster than the lightning itself. "Come on, Zeus. Catch her. Catch her," Prometheus shouted in frustration, seeking vengeance. I'm trying. Zeus panted, exhausted as he continued hurling bolts of lightning at Yamato, his energy visibly draining. "Damn it. You've really driven me crazy, you little brat," Big Mom roared, wiping the blood from her face. Her eyes burned with rage, and her overwhelming aura began to suffocate the air around them. She was losing herself in madness, something that would shock even her own children if they saw her now. But Yamato showed no fear. She came to a halt at a distance, turning her body to face her adversary directly. Planting her kanabo firmly on the ground, she growled, a bestial sound that echoed from deep within, a manifestation of her own fruit's primal instincts. I won't let someone like you defeat me. My father and I will find the One Piece together. Big Mom bellowed, her voice filled with conviction, her eyes glowing red. You're stuck in the past, you old witch. Yamato shot back, her gaze fierce. Kaido will not be the Pirate King, and neither will you. The ground beneath them began to crack and tremble as Yamato's freezing aura intensified. In her awakened form, she was completely covered in a layer of crystalline eyes that sparkled like diamond under the fiery glow of Prometheus. Her wolfish tail swayed, and her piercing blue eyes gleamed like shards of ice. The temperature around them plummeted, and the frosty mist thickened, swirling into a raging blizzard. Yamato's figure emerged from the heart of the storm, her eyes now blazing crimson. Big Mom steadied herself, holding her sword in one hand. Her terrifying presence remained unchanged. With her other hand, she suddenly grabbed Zeus by surprise. You're not getting away this time. Mama? The dark cloud, slightly fatigued, looked at Big Mom in surprise. She grabbed it without hesitation and pressed it directly onto her sword, the cloud still stunned. Merge with Napoleon. Big Mom ordered, and the cloud began to morph into the shape of the blade, crackling with electricity as it adapted. But she didn't stop there. Grabbing Prometheus, she infused the fiery Hami into the sword as well. The flames stretched and wrapped around the weapon, merging with the cloud to create a new and terrifying weapon. Yamato didn't relent either. Her body shone brighter within the swirling hurricane of icy mist, freezing even the flames burning nearby. Lightning began to crash from the sky as she prepared to unleash what might be her most powerful attack to date. You will die. Big Mom said, her crimson eyes blazing with rage as she unleashed Conqueror's Haki, holding her newly fused sword behind her, ready to strike with full force. Yamato remained silent. Hidden within the mist, she pulled her kanabo back, preparing to counter the attack. The air between them crackled with tension as their Haki clashed, both warriors ready to deliver a decisive blow. Their battle radiated such intensity that it alerted fighters across Onigashima. Even the Cypher Pol Zero agents approaching the rooftop had to tread carefully, wary of the impending clash. Yamato, you can defeat her. Luffy muttered as he sprinted across the ruined battlefield, glancing toward the rooftop. Focus on our fight. Bullet shouted, charging at Luffy with relentless determination. Luffy had no choice but to turn his attention to his approaching adversary. He launched himself forward with instant transmission, clashing fists with Bullet in the next instant. The impact caused a titanic explosion in their vicinity. Luffy clenched his teeth, realizing that Bullet's reputation as the demon heir wasn't exaggerated. I will prove I'm the strongest. Bullet roared with a wide grin, matching Luffy's strength. Their fists collided repeatedly, neither gaining the upper hand as the fierce battle dragged on. Reaching their limits, both fighters leaped back to create some distance before disappearing again. Luffy, now with a serious expression, vanished from sight. Bullet, still grinning excitedly, followed him. The two reappeared in different parts of the battlefield, exchanging blows and causing destruction wherever they went. Explosions erupted with each clash, and they would disappear again, only to repeat the process somewhere else. Their battle extended into the sky, where Bullet demonstrated his mastery of moonwalk, keeping up with Luffy's movements. Despite their intense speed and strength, neither of them used their devil fruits. It was a pure test of physical power and Haki. A prelude, a greeting of sorts between two warriors testing each other. Their fight continued, obliterating the area around them. Meanwhile, other battles raged with deadly seriousness. The air trembled as a clash of Conqueror's Haki erupted from the rooftop. Kaido and Lucy were locked in a fierce struggle. Their Haki collided without them even touching. Lucy dodged Kaido's kanabo, delivering a powerful kick to the weapon, pushing him back. The struggle between their Haki continued for several moments, the sheer intensity splitting the sky above them in two. The ground beneath them shattered as the shockwaves of their clash rippled outward. That brat. She's definitely strong. Kaido murmured, gazing at Lucy with newfound recognition. For the first time, he acknowledged her strength, though frustration lingered in his expression. Her brother had abandoned their fight to face Bullet. His gaze shifted toward Yamato, who was still preparing for her final clash with Big Mom. Damn it. Yamato has gotten much stronger. And all my disasters have already fallen. Kaido muttered to himself, sensing the defeat of his companions. Only he and the Tobirapo remained standing. Boundman. Lucy's shout pulled Kaido from his thoughts. He watched as she inflated her body, transforming into her Boundman form, her Haki manifesting visibly across her hardened body. The battle was far from over. TSK. With that, Kaido's body began to transform, blue scales spreading across his skin as he shifted into his hybrid form. His fangs bared, he stared down his opponent, now fully acknowledging her strength. "You're persistent, brat," Kaido roared, locking eyes with Lucy, who maintained a serious expression, showing no signs of backing down. Lucy stood in her balloon human form, the inflated version of Gear 4. Despite her puffed-up appearance, her movements remained swift and precise. Her arms, coated with Conqueror's haki, crackled with energy as she suddenly vanished from sight. Kaido mirrored her move, disappearing at the same time. In a flash, they reappeared midair, clashing violently. Lucy's enormous fists collided with Kaido's Kanabo, their brutal exchange of blows causing the ground beneath them to quake. After a fierce impact, both fighters retreated, disappearing again before Lucy used her rubber legs as springs to propel herself forward. "You don't get it, Kaido," Lucy shouted as she lunged at him with incredible force, the sound of her launch reverberating like thunder across the island. "No one is going to stop my brother. Not you. Not anyone." Kaido let out a deep, menacing laugh as he charged forward to meet her head-on. "We'll see if you can keep that confidence to the end," he roared, his Kanabo now crackling with purple lightning, growing heavier and more lethal with each passing second. "Prepare yourself, brat. I'm going to crush you." Kaido leapt into the air with astonishing power, his massive body slicing through the air like a bolt of lightning. The sheer pressure of his incoming attack distorted the atmosphere around him. Lucy didn't flinch. Instead, a confident grin spread across her face. She inflated her body even further, readying a devastating strike. Gamu Gamu no Kongan. Her massive fist shot toward Kaido like a meteor, enveloped in armament haki. The moment their attacks met, the impact was cataclysmic. Boom. The sheer force of the collision triggered a massive explosion, creating an enormous crater in the ceiling of Onigashima. Stones and debris were sent flying in all directions as Kaido's massive body was hurled backward, crashing through multiple walls and pillars. However, even after being hit by such a powerful blow, Kaido refused to fall. "Ha ha ha ha. Is that all you've got? Let's keep going, brat." He emerged from the rubble with a savage grin, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. His wild eyes gleamed with excitement and bloodlust. The battle was invigorating him, washing away his earlier frustration. Meanwhile, Lucy, too, was thrown back by the clash. She crashed into another part of the roof, coughing up blood. Her chest heaved with heavy breaths, but her resolve remained unshaken. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to stay in Gear 4. "I'm not done yet, Kaido." Once again, both fighters prepared to charge. Lucy bit into her arm, inflating it even more. Her muscles tensed as she readied her most powerful attack yet. With a thunderous launch, the ground beneath her exploded as she propelled herself toward Kaido at supersonic speed. "I'm going to take you down, Kaido." Kaido, unfazed, raised his Kanabo high above his head, ready to unleash his most devastating technique. Raimai hack. King Kong gun. The two titanic attacks hurtled toward each other, their collision imminent. For a brief moment, it seemed as though time and space themselves froze at the point of impact. It was at that very instant that new figures, dressed in white uniforms, rushed toward the rooftop of Onigashima. Their mission was clear: assassination. Chapter 471, The Wano War 11. A little before the events on the rooftop of Onigashima, the battle continued in the middle of the island, with the fight reaching its climax. All groups, both from the Straw Hat Fleet and Wano's army, were advancing toward the main halls, where the final battles were taking place and the ultimate goal of fully dominating Onigashima was within reach. Defeating any enemies in their path. The thousands of soldiers from the Big Mom and Kaido alliance were being taken down one by one, while Luffy's allied forces kept advancing with little difficulty. At the very center, the major battles had mostly concluded, with only a few still underway. One of them was between an enormous figure wielding a sword and another of normal size, armed with a hammer. Both rushed toward each other at great speed. Smoothie advanced against her sister, Lola, who showed no signs of backing down, smiling as she moved forward. "Lola!" Smoothie exclaimed. As soon as their weapons clashed, a burst of energy erupted, with black and red lightning crackling through the area. Lola said nothing, smiling as she stood firm against her sister and her sword. "How did you get so strong?" Smoothie muttered. "You used to be such a weak, chubby woman when you ran away." "What can I say? Smoothie, I'm a married woman now." Lola replied with a grin. "That doesn't answer my question." Smoothie shouted, trying to push Lola back with her massive body. Lola, however, began to counterattack without using any special abilities. Just sheer brute force. Advancing with her haki, she managed to push Smoothie back. The older sister's eyes widened in disbelief. Even with all her reinforcement, she was stunned by Lola's strength, who now seemed to gain the upper hand even against Smoothie's current form. Smoothie was sent flying backward, her body smashing through walls and causing part of the structure to explode. Lola landed calmly, resting her hammer on her shoulder as she observed the destruction. "Well, it seems I'm stronger than I used to be," Lola remarked calmly. She had managed to defeat Smoothie in a hockey clash, an impressive feat for everyone watching, given she was up against the third strongest member of Big Mom's children. "Am I dreaming?" Lola defeated Smoothie. Someone exclaimed in the background. "How is this possible? How did she get so strong?" Another family member murmured, incredulous at seeing their long-lost sister display such strength against Smoothie. They would be even more shocked to know she had acquired this power in less than a year. Suddenly, an explosion came from the other side, and screams echoed through the area. "She's increasing her power. She's absorbing more people," Lola murmured, observing her sister undergoing a transformation, her hockey growing even stronger. Everything fell silent as the screams stopped. Then, footsteps echoed. Smoothie was approaching, her silhouette visible through the hole where she had been thrown, now even larger than before. The walls began to crack under her new size. She advanced, her glowing red eyes and body pulsing with a power far greater than before. However, Lola didn't seem intimidated. "She's even more powerful now. It seems like even she can't contain all that strength, like Moria when my husband fought him," Lola commented nonchalantly. "Lola, you'll pay for this," Smoothie roared, raising her sword and charging at her sister. Lola merely sighed, opened her mouth, and began to inhale, finally using her devil fruit power. She had developed her abilities beyond simply eating things and transforming them into parts of her body. Now, she could also absorb energy. Smoothie was about to strike, but suddenly began to collapse. Her previously glowing red eyes returned to normal as she looked disoriented, feeling her energy being drained. Everyone watched in shock as a light emanated from Smoothie's body and was absorbed into Lola's mouth. The energy flowed continuously, and Smoothie started to shrink. "What?" Smoothie murmured as her body returned to its normal size. She fell to her knees on the ground, stunned, and looked at Lola with a hint of fear, completely drained of energy, as Lola wiped her mouth as if she had just finished a meal. "Sorry, sister, but this on's here," said Lola. In the next moment, she used instant transmission and disappeared, reappearing behind Smoothie with her hammer already swung. A split second later, Smoothie was hit with a devastating blow, crying out in pain. Her eyes rolled back before she collapsed to the ground. "What?" came the collective shout from those witnessing the battle. No one could believe the outcome. "With this, we're done here. But it won't take much longer now," murmured Lola, observing the other fights through her observation hockey. Though not highly developed, it was functional enough to keep track of the battles around her. "No. I can't lose." Black Maria found herself in a dire situation. Her body began to twist as Nico Robin, in her giant form courtesy of her devil fruit, held her tightly. Robin's true body stood at a distance, arms crossed, calmly controlling the situation. The next moment, Black Maria tried to fight back, but her body bent at an angle that seemed to nearly break her bones. She cried out in pain before collapsing, falling unconscious and reverting to her normal form. Satisfied with the result, Robin released her giant form. "That's one less to worry about," said Robin, turning her attention to the rest of the battlefield and leaving her defeated opponent behind. Meanwhile, Sasaki, in his Triceratops form, struggled to deal with his opponent. Domino, one of the combatants, had wrapped her whip around his neck, causing him to lose balance. With incredible strength, Domino dragged him across the ground. With a fierce yell, Domino yanked the whip once more, lifting Sasaki's massive ancient zone form off the ground before slamming him down with immense force, leaving him stunned. "Damn you!" Sasaki muttered, trying to rise. His resilience was formidable, but before he could react, Domino appeared before him. Using finger pistol, she began striking the vulnerable points of his body, carefully avoiding the hardened frontal carapace. Quickly, she coated her finger in armament hockey and employed the 6 powers, intensifying her attacks and penetrating deeply. Moments later, Sasaki collapsed to the ground, entirely incapacitated, as multiple finger pistol-like strikes riddled his body from all directions. "Looks like I'm done here," murmured Domino, satisfied with her relatively effortless victory given her current strength. "Get back here!" shouted Ulti, attempting to land a devastating headbutt. A pink-haired girl opened her eyes wide at the attack and swiftly flew away, the ground cracking from the impact of Ulti's strike. "Stop flying and fight me! Fight me!" Ulti yelled furiously at Perona, who hovered in the air surrounded by ghosts. "You're so wild!" Perona replied calmly, further enraging Ulti. The woman's fury was so intense that she began transforming into her full Pachycephalosaurus form. Ulti bent her legs and charged at Perona with all her strength. But as she leaped, Perona raised her hand. A ghost emerged, passing through Ulti. Upon being hit, Ulti lost her balance and crashed to the ground. I'm so useless. I should just be a flea. Ulti murmured, sinking into depression under the ghost's effect. Some beast pirates watching the fight were stunned by their companion's pitiful state. Ulti had no time to recover or react. Perona used instant transmission, appeared before her, raised her closed umbrella coated in hockey, and struck Ulti's head. Even in her transformed state, Ulti couldn't withstand the blow. A resounding explosion echoed, and she fell to the ground with her eyes rolled back, utterly defeated. The entire area fell silent as Ulti lay unconscious, while Perona floated in the air with her ghosts, her umbrella open now. No one dared challenge her, stepping back in fear. No. What is happening? Shouted Who's Who was struggling elsewhere on the battlefield. The entire area around him was blanketed by a blizzard created by Monet, wielding her devil fruit powers. Who's Who shivered in the cold, while even other beast pirates in the area were freezing, their clothing in tatters from the extreme conditions. Boss Who's Who is in trouble. One of his subordinates exclaimed. They could see nothing, but suddenly, a massive shadow began to emerge from within the snowstorm, growing larger in front of Who's Who. Everyone stared in terror as it increased in size. She's a monster. Others murmured, frightened as they watched Monet emerge from the snow, forming the figure of a colossal angel. Before Who's Who could react, Monet raised a snow-covered fist shaped by the shadow, coated it in hockey, and charged forward. Her strike hit the enemy with such force that it destroyed part of the surrounding area, creating an explosion. Who's Who couldn't even use his devil fruit powers. As the blizzard finally began to subside, the body of Who's Who lay on the ground, defeated. Though the snow lingered in the area, the temperature started to rise as Monet deactivated her powers. She advanced toward the remaining beast pirates, who began to scream before being swiftly defeated as well. Well, it seems everyone has finished their fights. All three calamities, the Sweet Commanders, and the Flying Six. Defeated. Only minor skirmishes remain now. Commented Reiju, using her hockey to sense what was happening around them. Kuina and Hugo also approached, dragging some fallen enemies across the ground. Yes, it looks like we're done here. Robin joined the group, accompanied by Domino. Perona and Monet also arrived as everyone regrouped. They observed the conscious members of the Beast Pirates and Big Mom's subordinates trembling in fear as they stared at them. It can't be. All the leaders have been defeated. Both Kaido's and Lady Big Mom's commanders. How could this happen? The enemies murmured in disbelief. How can they be so strong? I can't believe our strongest members were defeated so quickly. Don't give up. Boss Kaido is still fighting alongside Lady Big Mom. We must trust them. Some subordinates shouted, trying to rally morale. Yes. Trust Lord Kaido. He'll defeat Straw Hat. The Straw Hat crew members ignored the desperate cries of the remaining enemies. Well, it seems Luffy is the only one still fighting on the rooftop. Kuina commented. Should we go help him? I don't think he'd like that. After all, he didn't give us any orders. Replied Lami. Then why is Zoro heading up there right now? Reiju asked, noticing Zoro climbing and breaking through floors and walls, advancing rapidly toward the rooftop. She must have gotten lost. Kuina sighed, observing the scene and wondering what Zoro was doing. Chapter 472, The Wano War 12. Zoro continued breaking walls as he tried to reach the location where the others were, unaware that he had already surpassed the upper limits of Onigashima due to his invincible ability to get lost. He finally approached the last exit, and as he smashed through the final wall, the night sky appeared before him. He found himself ascending into the sky, surprised by the sight. Zoro murmured, sensing a presence beside him. When he turned, he saw a group of 4 men dressed in white, who seemed equally surprised to see him appear out of nowhere. Hey, you! Zoro said in a serious tone. You're not members of Kaido's or Big Mom's army, are you? Those outfits. You're from the world government, aren't you? The men immediately tensed. The first of them, who was closest, shouted. Execute the mission, even if it costs your lives. I'll hold him off. Zoro didn't hesitate as the man charged toward him. With a swift motion, Zoro decapitated him, but before the body fell, the man activated a smoke bomb, momentarily obscuring Zoro's vision. Zoro quickly swung his sword, clearing the smoke with a clean slash. However, by the time he could see again, the remaining 3 agents had already gained distance, heading into the heart of Onigashima. They used techniques like moonwalk and instant transmission to move swiftly toward the battlefield where the 4 emperors were fighting. Zoro clenched his teeth, irritated by the intentions of those men. Damn it! Zoro growled, spinning his sword and releasing a wave of Odin's energy to try to strike them. The agents, noticing the attack, reacted quickly. One of them kicked another and pushed others out of the energy's path, which was about to hit not just them but the ground of Onigashima. As the slash neared, one of the men in a white suit simply vanished, avoiding Zoro's attack. The energy strike tore through the ground, causing a massive explosion that passed through the ceiling and reached the island's end, drawing everyone's attention nearby who were engaged in battle. What was that? Luffy murmured as he continued his fierce exchange of punches with Bullet. The haki from both was so strong it caused explosions in the area as lightning struck around them. The two world government agents, now free from Zoro's attack, advanced quickly, splitting into two groups. One headed directly toward Luffy, seizing an opening in the middle of his clash with Bullet. The agent managed to appear between them, enduring the heat and attacks from their haki, which could have harmed him, but he endured. Disappearing as both Luffy and Bullet sensed his presence, he reappeared directly in front of Luffy's chest using instant transmission, pointing his fingers at Luffy's heart. "Die, Monkey D. Luffy!" the agent exclaimed, preparing to strike with finger pistol and haki. Luffy and Bullet were surprised by the man's sudden intrusion between them. Time seemed to freeze for an instant. Bullet narrowed his eyes, starting to grow enraged by the interruption. However, Luffy reacted faster, unleashing a special ability that caused an explosion to erupt around his body. The flames of chaos rapidly expanded, engulfing everything nearby in an instant, even as his fist remained connected with Bullet's. The explosion was so intense that Bullet was thrown backward, injured by its force. The world government agent, however, had no chance to react or execute his attack to destroy Luffy's heart. He was disintegrated by the explosion. The impact completely obliterated the area in a 30-meter radius, leaving behind only a massive crater, with all surrounding matter pulverized. Luffy was flung back, watching the flames surrounding his body. He still endured Bullet's attack. He looked around, alert to the situation, realizing there could be more agents who shouldn't have been there but had somehow appeared. His gaze shifted to the side, where he saw his sister in the moments before she clashed fists directly with Kaido. He was shocked to notice a man in white suddenly emerging and charging toward her. The sight brought to Luffy's mind the memory of that moment in the original story, when the agent had paralyzed Luffy. He would never let his sister reach that point, and urgency took over his body. The government sent agents here, then. He thought quickly. Using moonwalk to balance himself in the air, he wasted no time and generated energy around his sword after drawing Ace, launching a swift and precise slash. The agent didn't even have time to react. His body was split in half, leaving a trail of chaos flames. In the next moment, the strike tore through the ceiling of Onigashima with overwhelming force. "I did it," Luffy murmured, but he had spoken too soon. The next instant, something unexpected happened. Another agent appeared out of nowhere, growing in size. He possessed a diminishing devil fruit, allowing him to reduce his stature at will, which had helped him evade Zoro's earlier strike. The agent then charged at Lucy through the opening, advancing with moonwalk and instant transmission. His sister was surprised when she felt someone grab her arm, while Kaido also opened his eyes in shock. Activating Iron Body, on Lucy, she felt her body stiffen, unable to move, just as she delivered a final punch to Kaido. Bullet had already risen but did not move, watching the situation with narrowed eyes from the hole where Luffy had thrown him. Luffy knew he couldn't save his sister in time with the agent using his ability on her. "I'll have to use this," Luffy murmured internally. He then activated the power of his devil fruit. The entirety of Onigashima was affected as he utilized an advanced ability, freezing time around him. More fruit model, amplify human devil fruit, time, apply, 0.0001 times. Suddenly, everything became static, though not entirely frozen, as everything moved in extreme slow motion. Luffy had slowed time with a technique he had developed over the past year. He knew he couldn't sustain this ability for long, but it would give him a chance. Moving at high speed through the frozen space, he reached Lucy at the exact moment Kaido was lowering his weapon. With a single blow, Luffy severed the head of the Cypher Pol Zero agent clinging to Lucy's arm, freeing his sister from imminent danger. Without losing time, he kicked Lucy away, pushing her out of the path of Kaido's devastating attack, which was about to strike her. Luffy knew he couldn't maintain his ability any longer. He let it go and found himself in the path of Kaido's attack. As time returned to normal, Kaido didn't have a chance to react before delivering a direct blow to Luffy, who had appeared in Lucy's place as she was flung away. Luffy began to feel the attack burying into his chest as he tried to withstand it and activated his fruit to endure the impact. More fruit model, amplify human devil fruit, defense, apply, 200 times. The force of the impact was monstrous. Kaido's attack, combined with Luffy's extreme durability, caused the entire area around them to explode. Lucy, dazed, fell backward, bouncing off the ground like a balloon, losing her inflated form and returning to normal. She got up and looked, horrified, at the sight of her brother taking a direct hit. Luffy! Lucy screamed, running back to the area where Kaido had struck him. Kaido, still shocked, stared at the field of destruction his attack had caused. A cloud of dust rose, obscuring the view. What was that? Kaido murmured, stunned, as he watched Luffy's silhouette emerge from the debris. Don't worry, Kaido. Your attack really hurt, but it's far from defeating me. Luffy's voice echoed as he reappeared in his hybrid form. Blood trickled from his face, mouth, and chest, where Kaido's Kanabo had struck him. You withstood my attack. Kaido murmured, internally shocked. He was furious about the agents appearing in the middle of the battle but never imagined someone could take a direct hit of that magnitude and still remain standing. You could say that. Luffy replied. It seems the world government is trying to interfere with us. He glanced at the severed head of a Cypher Pol Zero agent rolling in the distance, along with the bodies split and disintegrated by his and Zoro's attacks. Luffy. Lucy approached, running, visibly shaken. Luffy looked at her, then at Kaido. Let me talk to my sister quickly before we continue the fight, he requested. Then, Luffy vanished, reappearing beside Lucy. He deactivated his hybrid form while Bullet observed the scene from a distance. Despite being dissatisfied with the interruption, Bullet remained silent, understanding the situation. Luffy, are you okay? Why did that man interfere in the fight? Lucy asked, worried, scanning Luffy's body for any severe injuries. Don't worry about that, sister. Luffy replied, shaking his head. I'm fine. It hurt a little, but I'll survive. Now, I need you to do something. He touched the area above Lucy's heart, surprising her, and continued. Feel the beat, Lucy. It's time for you to awaken, Nika. Remember the training in Skypiea. Unleash the power that can protect all your comrades. Lucy fell silent, processing Luffy's words as he insisted. It's time for you to awaken it, Lucy. Use the true power of your devil fruit. I'll be waiting for it. With a smile, Luffy began to move away from his sister. He disappeared again, reappearing in front of Bullet. Sorry about that, he said, spitting some blood as his econ regeneration began to heal his wounds. It's fine. Bullet responded tersely. Let's continue, then. Luffy nodded, slamming his fists into the ground as he prepared, transforming back into his hybrid form. Lucy, still watching her brother return to fight from a distance, turned her gaze resolutely to Kaido. She took a deep breath. Kaido. She shouted firmly. Our fight wasn't interrupted, but it's far from over. Kaido narrowed his eyes, noting Lucy's determination. Let's continue, brat, he said in a threatening tone. Though he noticed Big Mom and Yamato's battle in the distance, he refocused entirely on Lucy, recognizing her as an unexpected adversary. Give me a minute, Lucy requested, closing her eyes. She clasped her fists together and began to concentrate. Remember the beat. It's time to awaken, Nika. Luffy's words echoed in her mind as she delved inward. Slowly, Lucy began to visualize her fruit amidst the strange darkness, feeling it respond as though it were alive. Her heartbeat grew stronger, syncing with the dormant power inside her. Then, the first beat of the drums of liberation began. Chapter 473, The Wano War 13. Let's keep going, said Luffy, as he unleashed his flames, entering once again into the hybrid form of his mythical devil fruit. Bullet stared at him intensely, beginning to use his own devil fruit. The ground beneath their feet started to disintegrate as he increased his power and strength. Bullet did not lag behind in releasing his devil fruit as well, intensifying his energy even further, and both began to exchange devastating blows. The flames of Luffy and the power of Bullet clashed in a frenetic battle of hockey. The world government has interfered, and I won't forget that, shouted Bullet, with a stern look. He stopped paying attention to the fights around him and turned his full attention back to Luffy as their battle resumed with intensity. But what matters now is our fight. Meanwhile, of all the battles happening on the roof, the most intense was between Yamato and Big Mom. Zoro, after checking that Luffy was dealing with the world government agents, returned to watching the distant battles without getting involved in any. Suddenly, the entire battlefield felt the fusion of Haki from Yamato and Big Mom, releasing all their strength. Lightning spread throughout the area, indicating that the contest between the two had reached its limit. Yamato hurled her Kanabo forcefully against Big Mom, who defended herself using a combination of her brute strength, King's Haki, and the powers of Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon. The fight continued intensely, with no clear winner. I will not lose to a brat, yelled Big Mom. She refused to accept the idea that a young woman, less than half her age, could surpass her. Big Mom was the strongest woman in the world and would not allow anyone to outdo her. However, Yamato's gaze was fierce. She used her awakened fruit, employing all her strength. Anyone collapsing under the impact of their attacks would be defeated. Then a confrontation between ice and flames and electricity continued for long seconds, while the hockey of both made the entire Onigashima tremble. Even the sea around was agitated, as tiny points glimmered in the night sky, a result of the intensity of the combat. Kaido, who was there against Lucy, momentarily stopped to watch the girl with closed eyes, seeing the dispute at its peak. Suddenly, the ground beneath Big Mom began to crack. Startled, she looked around in panic. Damn! I'm being pushed back. It was something she couldn't believe. Yamato continued to pressure her, releasing even more ice, while Big Mom countered with the flames of Prometheus and the lightning of Zeus. The confrontation continued until the ground beneath Big Mom gave way even more. Even with fire and ice colliding, she was losing ground. This shouldn't be possible, thought Big Mom, losing her balance. Her body was thrown backward, leaving a gap for Yamato. Taking advantage of the opening, Yamato forced Big Mom back with all the strength of her cane nabo, pushing her back. The blow was so intense that Big Mom was stunned, dropping her sword. Mama! Prometheus, Zeus, and Napoleon shouted together, alarmed by the impact. In the next moment, Yamato advanced and struck Big Mom's head hard, making the woman scream as her eyes turned white from the impact. The entire area began to explode, creating several giant ice spikes amid the destruction. The force of the explosion threw Big Mom into Onigashima. The sound echoed throughout the island, causing it to tremble violently. Those approaching the main area were stunned to see floors being destroyed in front of them as Big Mom was flung to the end of the island, defeated. What is this? What's happening? The samurai of Wano shouted, astonished. Hey, was that? Nami murmured, frowning as she tried to understand the situation. That was Big Mom. Usopp responded, confirming as he felt the energy of Haki. Does that mean Big Mom was defeated? Asked Chopper, still surprised. Yes, it seems so. Usopp replied, already preparing to move forward. Let's keep going to see what's happening. Yuta said to everyone. In the end, the groups headed towards the main area, where the fights had already ended. When they arrived, they were surprised. What? There are no more enemies? Murmured Frankie, looking around. Yes, it seems we've won, said Vivi, walking towards the group that included Lamy, Reiju, Robin, and all the others who had fought in the main battles. You finally arrived. We've finished everything here, Lamy stated calmly. So, only one fight remains, murmured Bippo, looking up towards the ceiling. He could hear the distant sounds of battles still happening. The beast pirates, except for Kaido, have been defeated, announced a samurai, making everyone around surprised by the outcome. After all, it was easy to get here. The samurais, in turn, began to celebrate. We won. I can't believe it. We defeated the beast pirates, shouted the people of Wano, euphoric. Now only Kaido is left. Monkey D. Luffy must be fighting him. Another samurai commented. Let's support our allies, said the warriors as they moved with renewed hope. We finally defeated the 4 Emperor Su. The nightmare is over, murmured a young woman among the samurais, whose face was hooded. It was Princess Hori. She looked up at the sky, incredulous. Not all fights have ended, Princess Hori, commented her bodyguard. The main fight is still pending, but I have no doubt we will come out victorious. It seems that, in the end, your mother's and father's prophecy was wrong, despite nearly 20 years having passed, he murmured, looking around with contained emotion. It doesn't matter now, Hori replied, finally with tears in her eyes. Wano will soon be free. Meanwhile, Yamato fell to the ground near the hole created with Big Mom's body, exhausted. She was kneeling, with one knee on the ground, trying to catch her breath after the intense battle. Around her, giant ice stakes rose like monuments to her victory. I won. I defeated Big Mom, Yamato murmured, smiling, still incredulous that she had defeated 4 emperors. She had no idea that her strength could reach such a level at that moment. Slowly getting up, Yamato heard explosions in the distance. Emerging from between the ice stakes, she looked around to check what was happening. The fight at other points of Onigashima continued, at least Luffy's, while his father was watching her, with Lucy still standing near him with her eyes closed. Inside Onigashima, Lamy had disappeared from the main room and was now advancing to the roof using teleportation. She observed the situation from afar, trying to see the ongoing battles. A bolt of lightning tore through the sky at that moment, illuminating the night, while Enel calmly flew over the roof, watching the unfolding fights below. Kdu looked at Yamato, stunned, realizing she had really defeated Big Mom. However, a strange drum sound made him immediately turn forward. He saw only Lucy, standing, eyes closed, making no move. No further drum sound was heard by Kdu, but he knew something was changing in that woman. However, those who could hear the voice of all things still felt the drums beating. Meanwhile, Luffy exploded the area once again in his fight against Bullet. His gaze fell on Lucy at the sound of the drums beginning to emerge. She's managing to do it, finally," murmured Luffy, before disappearing and charging forward with a direct attack against Bullet. The two began to exchange blows at an extremely high speed, disappearing and reappearing as the place became chaotic. The attacks were so intense that they completely destroyed one of the large horns of Onigashima. Thousands of kilometers away, in the Grand Line, someone was in a location known only to a select group of people. Not even the kings gathered in that place knew that person. A mysterious figure, veiled, gently held a butterfly in their hands, seemingly admiring the insect calmly. However, the butterfly suddenly became startled, and the mysterious person turned towards a certain direction, their face showing a look of surprise. "That's it," murmured the figure, barely believing. "That drum." Their voice echoed softly, repeating, "I heard it. The first beat of the drum of liberation." The figure seemed to feel the power of the strongest hockey that had ever existed in the world. Joy Boy. Meanwhile, outside of Mary Joy's, back in the New World, something else was happening. A gigantic being, with a body so immense it surpassed the clouds, moved its head forward, staring intently in a certain direction. The movement surprised the minks who lived in S, as that place, usually calm, had suddenly changed. Z had moved on its own, as if drawn to something. Z remained looking for a while, until the second beat echoed, and then the third. Slowly, the rhythm of the drums increased. Could this be? Thoughts. Although no one could hear its voice, its opaque eyes were fixed in the direction from which the drums came. Then, the drums began to play in a unique and powerful rhythm. "These are the drums of liberation. I can hear them," murmured Z, barely believing. How long? How long has it been since I heard them?" 800 years. It paused and continued, with intense emotion in its voice, "This can only mean one thing. Joy Boy is back," it exclaimed with all its might. Z desperately wanted to go to that place and meet the person making the drums resonate, but knew it could not. After all, it was bound there, as a punishment that had lasted more than 800 years. It could only watch, unable to move, as the drums continued to play, marking the return of something grandiose. Meanwhile, the sounds of liberation continued to echo through Onigashima, while only Luffy and Lucy could hear them, the drums beating in a unique rhythm, announcing something grandiose. Kaido, standing in front of Lucy, didn't understand what was happening. He couldn't hear the drums, but he could see the changes occurring in her. Lucy's body began to emit white smoke, which made Kaido furrow his brow. "What is this?" asked Kaido, not understanding what was happening. Lucy's hair began to change, turning white as snow. Her appearance took on a much stranger form, while her haki exploded with intensity. The energy spread across the roof of Onigashima, surprising Enel, Yamato, Zoro, and Lumi, who were also present at the location. Luffy, watching from afar while exchanging blows with Bullet, cracked a smile when he realized what was happening. He threw another punch at his opponent, but Bullet, determined, kept his focus on the fight, ignoring everything around. Suddenly, a playful and shrill feminine laughter echoed through Onigashima. Ha! 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 It was a contagious laugh, signifying that Joy Girl had finally awakened. Chapter 474, The Wano War 14. Ha 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 ha. The laughter grew louder with every exclamation, while a surge of energy began to fill the ceiling, imbued with both Conqueror's haki and Armament haki simultaneously. Those who had already finished their fights turned to look at Lucy, incredulous at what they were witnessing, questioning what was happening to her. Her laughter echoed so intensely that it seemed to reach both inside and outside of Onigashima, accompanied by lightning that illuminated the interior. Everyone in the fleet and Wano's army looked up, astonished, as the streaks of haki passed above them. "What is this? Something's happening up there. Who's laughing like that?" someone asked, confused, while the others kept their gazes fixed on the ceiling. No one truly understood what was going on. Even Bonnie, who had been searching for Joy Boy since the beginning of her journey, couldn't grasp the origin of that feminine laughter. Luffy had never mentioned anything like this to her. He had only said she would find answers about Joy Boy during her travels. Yamato, Zoro, Lami, and Enel watched Lucy acting strangely on the roof. She continued laughing in front of Kaido, who stared at her while bolts of Conquerors and Armament haki streaked across the sky around them. Suddenly, the ground began to change texture, becoming rubbery and forming waves that rippled throughout Onigashima, while her laughter expanded even further. She's awakening her fruit," Kaido said in astonishment, feeling the ground beneath his feet shift. The surroundings turned into something akin to a trampoline, forcing even Kaido to struggle for balance as Lucy's transformation progressed. Her hair finally turned completely white, and a radiant aura surrounded her body. Amid the thunder enveloping her, Lucy stood tall, continuing to laugh. Then, bolts of lightning shot from her body toward the sky, splitting it wide open and revealing the full moon. "This is getting so fun!" Lucy exclaimed with a smile, while Kaido stood speechless, stunned by her transformation. Why is she changing her appearance and awakening her fruit at the same time? Kaido muttered, unable to look away. What kind of fruit is this? Wasn't it a human fruit model, sun god Nika devil fruit? Kaido had never been deeply interested in Lucy, nor had he investigated the specifics of her fruit, focusing only on Luffy. He only knew it was a Parimsha, but her transformation left him dumbfounded. Her appearance, the power emanating from her. Everything seemed beyond his comprehension, as her transformation resembled that of his own and an awakening of a Parimsha simultaneously. What kind of form is this? Kaido asked, while even Bullet halted his fight with Luffy to observe the scene. Luffy, too, stopped attacking, raising an eyebrow as he looked at Lucy. Seeing Bullet's puzzled expression, Luffy smiled. "This is Nika, the sun god," he said with a grin, turning to Bullet. "Don't be surprised. Devil fruits are born from people's desires. Some of them wish to become gods." He spoke before turning back to the demon's heir. Bullet remained serious, staring at Luffy intently. Had he gone with Roger to the final island and learned the truth? If that were the case, Bullet should understand what this meant and who the previous Joy Boy was. Yet at the same time, Luffy couldn't discern what Bullet's expression truly revealed as the man kept his narrowed eyes on him. "Let my sister fight Kaido," Luffy concluded before facing Bullet again. "Let's continue." Bullet planted one foot back, assuming a combat stance. The next moment, both disappeared, rushing toward each other and resuming their fight. The impact of their blows caused a burst of haki that reverberated across the entire island. Meanwhile, Lucy continued laughing, the clear sky above her mirroring her transformation. She looked at Kaido and smiled, still releasing haki in visible waves, unable to control it. Fixing her eyes on her opponent, she said firmly, "Let's continue." Lucy leaped into the air, positioning herself before the full moon, creating an almost mythical symbol of Nika. Then, she bit her thumb with her teeth, inflating her hand with air. Her hand began to grow until it became gigantic, something completely out of the ordinary. Kaido watched with a mix of astonishment and apprehension as Lucy stretched out her arm, forming an enormous clenched fist, ready to strike him. She then swung her arm downward in a powerful hammer-like motion, covering her entire enemy with her giant, elastic hand. Kaido quickly raised his Kanabo to shield himself. As soon as the blow landed, he lost his balance, the ground beneath his feet starting to give way, transforming into rubber. Surprised, he staggered, losing control and taking the full brunt of the attack. When he was flung upward, it felt as though he were on a trampoline. Lucy pulled her fist from the ground, ready to continue her assault. Kaido found himself airborne again, gritting his teeth. Before he could react, two enormous arms appeared on either side of him and clapped together, slamming him with powerful palms, leaving him dazed. The hands pulled back but returned to strike him repeatedly in an iconic sequence. Yamato was in shock at what he was witnessing, as were the other Straw Hats on the rooftop. They all watched as Lucy relentlessly pounded Kaido until he finally acted. Swiftly, Kaido transformed into his dragon form, gaining the advantage in size. Turning toward Lucy, he gathered fire energy in his mouth before unleashing a direct attack on her. Lucy was caught off guard. The attack struck her,